Good evening, everyone. I know there are a few still coming out of the waiting room, but we'd like to welcome you to the March 5th monthly meeting of the Boston Civic Design Commission. Glad to have you all here, and we are now called to order. My name is Linda Eastley, co-chair of the BCDC, and I'm joined by my co-chair, Mimi Love. I'd like to begin by thanking all the commissioners for donating their time to shaping the city of Boston into a more beautiful, sustainable, and equitable city for all its citizens. The open meeting law requires that we notify the public that an audio recording of this meeting is being made by the commission staff. We will now do a roll call of commissioners participating in tonight's meeting. Commissioners, if you could say present as I call your name. Amy Chambers.
Present.
Jonathan Evans.
Present.
Diana Fernandez.
Present.
David Haseen.
Present.
Kathy Kotaritas.
Here.
Mimi Love.
Present.
I think Anne-Marie Lubenow had to step away for just a moment.
I'm here, present.
Oh, great. Glad you're back, Anne-Marie. David Manfredi.
Present.
Catherine Morris.
Present.
Bill Ron.
Present.
Lara Solano. Lara, are you able to connect to audio? All right, we'll work on that. Kirk Sykes.
Present.
And myself, Linda Eastley, present. Our next item is the minutes approval. Is there a motion to approve meeting minutes from both the February 6th monthly meeting and the February 20th design committee meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor, please say aye. Jonathan Evans.
Aye.
David Haseen.
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritas.
Aye.
Mimi Love.
Aye.
Anne-Marie Lubenow.
Aye.
David Manfredi.
Aye.
Catherine Morris.
Aye.
Bill Ron.
Aye.
Lara, are you able to your audio yet?
I just received a message that she's not able to unmute herself. We are still trying to solve this technical issue. Apologies to Commissioner Solano.
Thank you, Christina. Kirk Sykes.
Aye.
And myself, Linda Eastley. The minutes are approved. So commissioners, tonight we've got 5 total projects to review. And Christina, I'll hand it over to you to give a report from the review committee introducing our 2 proposed projects first.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Eastley, and good evening, commissioners. Per the regulations of Article 28 of the Boston Zoning Code, BPDA staff have prepared the following recommendations for the consideration of this commission. 2 Charlesgate West in Fenway. A proposed project at this location contemplates the development of approximately 290,000 square feet of development on approximately 0.46 acre site. A PNF was filed on November 5th, 2021, and BPDA staff hosted public meetings on December 15, 2021, and January 11, 2024. It is our recommendation that the commission vote to review the proposed project.
Thank you, Christina. Mimi Love is recused from this project. Do we have a motion to review?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. Please answer aye if you are in favor. Jonathan Evans.
Aye.
David Haseen.
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritas.
Aye.
Anne-Marie Lubenow.
Aye.
David Manfredi.
Aye.
Catherine Morris.
Aye.
Bill Ron.
Aye.
Lara Solano, are you with us yet?
She is also recused from this project.
Okay. Kirk Sykes.
Aye.
And myself, Linda Eastley, we will review.
Thank you. The next project, the Boston University Charles River Campus 2013 to 2023 Institutional Master Plan. Boston University will seek an amendment and 2-year extension to the Charles River Campus 2013 to 2023 institutional master plan. The proponent previously contemplated embarking upon a 10-year IMP and made an initial presentation to this commission on July 11th, 2023. However, the university has recently welcomed a new president and has instead determined to pursue a near-term amendment and extension to an existing IMP to allow sufficient time to thoughtfully integrate Dr. Gilliam's strategic vision into the university's forthcoming long-range planning efforts. An IMPNF was filed on February 1st, 2024, and BPDA staff hosted a public meeting on February 20th, 2024. The amendment and 2-year extension contemplates 3 projects. Development of a new academic facility referred to as the Pardee School of Global Studies, which contemplates approximately 70,000 square feet of academic use on a 1.3-acre site. Renovation of the Mugar Memorial Library, the university's largest library, and renovation of Warren Towers, the university's largest undergraduate residential facility. While all 3 projects have been communicated as near-term priorities for the university, the renovation of Warren Towers is particularly urgent. To streamline review, the university will seek simultaneous Article 80B entitlements for the scope of work in parallel to the Article 80D entitlement. We recommend that the commission vote to review the amendment and 2-year extension to the Charles River campus and waive the right to review the 80B entitlement specific to Warren Towers. We make this request on the grounds that the proposed scope of the work for Warren Towers is primarily interior to the building. Changes to the exterior are the result of compliance with the energy code and include window replacements and increased mechanical penthouses with modest impact on perceived building height.
Thanks, Christina. We've got both Commissioner Ron and Solano recused from this project. Commissioners, in your motion to review, if you could add the caveat about Warren Towers, whether we would like to see the proponent present that project today and make a decision after the presentation, or whether you'd like to waive it outright. Do we have a motion?
I'd move that it would be good to see it and vote to waive it afterward. I mean, as part of the presentation, just to understand what the scope is and then determine afterwards.
Right.
Second.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Mimi. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
David Hassin,
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritis,
Aye.
Mimi Love,
Aye.
Anne Marie Lubenow,
Aye.
David Manfredi,
Aye.
Catherine Morris,
Aye.
Kirk Sykes,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Eastley. We will review all the components and make a motion once we've had a chance to review. So Christina, that brings us to our third item of business, which
Thank
is
you.
175 North Harvard, and I believe Laura is recused from this.
This is the longest report from Design Committee. But thank you. The last item of this report does not require a vote. The commission voted to recommend approval of a proposed project at 175 North Harvard Street, Alston, at the September 5th, 2023 monthly meeting, with the proviso that the proposed project return to BCDC during the course of BPDA design review for additional review of proposed building materiality and landscape elements. The commission will hear a brief presentation from the proponent narrowly tailored to address the conditions of the commission's recommendation. Any discussion following the presentation is advisory to the proponent and BPDA design review staff. And so with that, no vote at this time, just a brief presentation. We invite the representatives of the proponent team to begin a 5-minute presentation. Staff will then give you a 2-minute warning, followed by some discussion with the commissioners. And I believe no public testimony is required.
Thank you, Christina. And I failed to mention that Bill Ron also is recused on this project.
So you need a motion to approve. I so move.
No,
We
it-
don't
No.
need any
So,
motion.
we
Mhm.
don't need a motion for that. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
I think we're just ready for the proponent to start the presentation.
Hi everyone, this is Tom Gibson from Howth Tompkins Architects based in London, as you can probably tell from my accent, and let me share the screen. Sorry, I thought Tyler would be doing a quick introduction, but I'll dive right in.
Hey, Tom, I can talk now, but I'm Mark Hanley from Harvard University. I think the context is fully covered. We've seen BCDC subcommittee in the full committee on the 5th, as was just mentioned. And I think the narrow presentation is quite comprehensive. So Tom, I'll kick it right over to you and we can give the brief presentation.
Brilliant, thanks Mark. I'll very briefly just remind everyone about the sort of key stats for both components of the project. Of course, as you can see on this site plan, a reminder that the ART Performance Centre is on the eastern side of the block along North Harvard Street, with the Harvard Affiliate Housing Project on the western half of the site. So the ART is approximately 70,000 square feet, 2 very flexible performance auditoria, and an outdoor performance yard that was the subject of discussion, and a host of supporting uses, including a lobby space that will be active throughout the day, and it's about 3 stories in height. The housing component, approximately 275,000 square feet. That's 275 units for Harvard affiliates, and is about 13 stories high. So I'll jump into one of the subjects of discussion with the BPDA urban design team since the September 5th vote last year. And we've had a really positive dialogue, I think. The top right-hand image you can see here is showing a cedar cladding to the eastern portion of the ART, which we're also using horizontally for brise soleil in areas, for solar shading. And actually the big sort of design change since we last met is the illuminated lettering that you can see in that top right image. That was previously a large scale LED display, which we've moved away from due to concerns impact on North Harvard Street traffic and the adjacent residential buildings. The bottom right hand image is an elevation of Ivy Lane. That's the south elevation. And as you can see here, it's illustrating quite nicely the change in material to brick on the western side of the site, which forms a sort of backdrop to the housing courtyard, and the red painted horizontal wood cladding for what we call at the base of the building there. Which lands on a boardmark concrete weathering base. We're just about to start a really exciting public art process for the large-scale mural. As you can see, these images show it wrapping around both the east and western sides to sort of define that northern massing, and really a sort of, addressing the views from North Harvard Street and Smithfield and across McCurdy Track. So we're working with the artist Pro Black, who you may know did the Greenway mural, last year. And the process, we're looking forward to, continuing the dialogue with the urban design team at the BPDA on the exact, artwork as it emerges. Finally, on the ART, before I hand over to Debbie from Marvel, the yard enclosure and the sort of the programming of the yard space itself has been subject to a lot of conversation. The cross section in the bottom right is hopefully helpful, and that's showing a 9.5 foot high solid enclosure with a series of hinged double doors that can open up to make it a porous space or closed off for events, depending on the programming itself. At high level, we have a lightweight armature, which is used for fixing speakers and lighting, and actually that's very deliberately designed to sort of announce the space as a working outdoor studio, as it were. And then the whole enclosure itself is softened with a trellis and vertical climbing plants, and you can see the sort of edge planters there on the plan on the left hand side there. And I'll hand over to Debbie.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie with Marvel, here to present our updates. So you can see here the materials we've selected are meant to convey a sense of durability and permanence that is typical of Harvard buildings. All of the materials that we've selected are sourced locally to comply with our rigorous Living Building Challenge and LEED requirements. We worked closely with brick manufacturers to find brick blends which feel contextually appropriate to both the Allston neighborhood and to Harvard's historic red brick campus. The granite watercourse, pavers, and gray metals evoke similar palettes in the area, and blue townhouse doors add a pop of color at the residential scale. In response to feedback from BCDC and BPDA to make the building feel lighter, we've added the light gray base at the townhouse level and moved it up a bit. The middle of the building is the red university blend brick, which we've detailed to break down the scale through a woven pattern with brick articulation. And at the top of the building, we have an articulated brick cornice, which completes the woven pattern. Our intent is that as the sun moves throughout the day, light and shadow will emphasize the woven brick textures and depths differently throughout time, allowing the building to mark this time as it passes. And just to note that we will continue to work with BPDA throughout the visual mockup process to optimize the legibility of this woven texture. Can you go to the next slide, Tom? Here in the courtyard, you'll see this primarily serves the residents of the affiliate housing building, but it is accessible to the public, similar to a typical Harvard quad or a residential courtyard. This courtyard has two distinct zones which define public and private. The lower woodland garden is lushly planted and it connects Ivy Lane and South Campus Drive with a series of outdoor rooms and informal seating. The upper gathering space is nestled within the housing building's mass in close proximity to the building's interior amenity spaces, and it's raised up to the flood resiliency level. You'll see here that since we last spoke, we made a meaningful change to the courtyard lawn. The lawn was located in the sunniest spot in the courtyard. However, the team agrees with BCDC and BPDA's comments on its usability and maintenance concerns. So we've replaced the lawn with a sustainably harvested hardwood deck, which supports the flexible uses that we are looking at, such as outdoor exercise, gatherings, and events. Also, its location next to these amenities is ideal because you can sort of spill out into this area. And we also believe that this will improve the pedestrian circulation in the upper zone. And I'm here to say, on behalf of everyone on the ART and Harvard teams, we'd like to thank you for your partnership and meaningful feedback. We're excited to move forward with this project, and we're excited to see it become a meaningful part of the Allston community.
Thank you, Debbie. Does that conclude your presentation tonight?
It does, yes.
Great. So commissioners, as Christina mentioned, we are not here for a vote, but as part of that September 2023 vote, we did have a couple of provisos, one about building materials and one about the landscape character, some of which is being shown in this slide. And so the proponent team and BPDA are welcoming your thoughts about whether these provisos have been met. So if you have any comments, you can raise your Zoom hand. David Hassan.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the presentation and for being a partner in this conversation. I think I just have one question about I very much appreciated the commentary about the brick and the woven quality and the depth of the facade. If you could just pull up that long view of I think it's the slide before. So my only question would be, or thought would be that as this develops, these are very large facades, of course, and I think that the weaving and the detail that you're describing, I'm sure will add a lot of richness. I wish that the stepping of the main volumes as they face that green space translated down into the massing just a little bit somehow, through reveals or something in order to sort of break the breadth of that facade, but it's just a, you know, a thought that maybe in the detailing that I think Debbie described, you know, maybe that's there and I'm just not, you know, seeing it. So that's just something that is a question in my mind.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. Mimi?
Maybe if we go back to the site plan, I was really excited to see this project again, because when we last left it, maybe a zoom in of that landscape plan, we definitely had some concerns, and I was very much looking forward to seeing the development of the landscape in the quad space, and that central space between, you know, the performing arts center, ART, and the housing. And while I can see that it significantly changed, if you can go to the rendering with the former lawn that is now a deck, perfect. So there's been significant changes. They still feel a little bit conceptual to me. And I was hoping that in this presentation, we'd see a little bit more development. And in particular, I'm just looking around the edges where I see, you know, the playroom, the gym, the lounge, all touch where there's a zone of green that touches these spaces that really should connect indoor to outdoor. It seems to me that this is still very conceptual and schematic. And I would hope that as you continue to work with the BPDA on developing the landscape, there's a lot more attention to connectivity and the porosity of inside and outside. And just thinking through all of the spaces, it's too zoomed out to honestly talk about it in depth, but I was hoping to see a little bit more development in the landscape, because that was pending when we last reviewed this project.
Thank you, Mimi. Kirk?
I'd like to second David's comments about the detailing of this, and one needs to only go across the street and venture to some of the red brick buildings of HBS to see that there is another layer of detailing. And I'm hoping that design staff can work with the proponent to not only break down the stepping a bit, but also to bring that next layer of articulation. I mean, there's one really simple, but I think even the simple buildings at Harvard Business School reflect some of the complexity of nice brick detailing that will hopefully show up here. And it's hard to tell at this scale that that's the intent, but I'm hoping it is. And I defer to BPDA staff to actually make sure it is.
Thank you, Kirk.
If you'd like, I can just note, the intent is to break up the steps with these piers that stick out substantially from the main facade, so that you do have a read of, you know, the different volumes as it goes down the street. I think because the renderings are always hard to kind of get the full picture on, we are intending to work on that, and we have worked on that with BPDA. And Mimi, to your point about the landscape, we have a supplemental materials booklet that went out with this too. And I know that the intent is for us to work with BPDA to sort of soften up the edges at the building. So thanks for your comment.
Thanks for that response, Debbie. Catherine?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Mimi Love's comment. It does feel very conceptual around the courtyard. Just the way that in which the Performance Center has connectivity, and there's ebbs and flows to the facade with the mural, but also the consideration of space and how people move. It feels very Tetris. And so I'm wondering if there's designs in the papers or the ways in which that courtyard can be more connected, even with the pathway design itself, might lend to some creativity that allows it to be a natural, organic blend versus it very boxy and rectangle. So just wanted to coincide with Commissioner Love on that.
Thank you, Catherine. Commissioners, any other comments for the team?
I just wanted to say, Debbie, that I see now what you're talking about as I look closer. And I, you know, I don't know if it's an issue of cost or what, but I think that I love that idea, and I would hope that you can make that a little bit more emphatic so that it reads, you know, for all the conversation about sun, we don't get as much as we would like. And I think that sometimes some of those details need to be a little bit in a Boston context, in a Gray Boston complex context, need to be just a little bit more pronounced in order to read in all, yeah, it's definitely clearer now. So anything you can do to pump that up, I think would be great. Just my thought.
All right, we'll do our best.
Thanks, David. Any other comments from commissioners? So we don't have a vote on this today, but hopefully this feedback has been helpful. I'll just quickly summarize what I think we've been sharing with you tonight. First, especially on the housing, to work with the BPDA on this next layer of articulation, which I think is how Kirk described it. And in my mind, you know, thinking more about the framing of the elements, how they hit the ground, and a greater sense of articulation and depth would be really helpful and beneficial to the project. And second, on the landscape, we are in a rare moment here where we are missing all three of our landscape architects to review this project. But I think that the notes that both Mimi and Catherine shared are really important. And I'll add my own, which is that the landscape to me doesn't feel as holistic as it could. Feels like there are some individual moments that are linked together with a path, but I think the programming could be a lot stronger. This could be a really wonderful space, not only for the residents, but also for ART patrons. So really encourage you to continue to work with the BPDA on strengthening that. And I think with those comments, we wish you luck and appreciate you all coming back for the informational update.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Easley that this moves us into the report from Design Subcommittee.
Yeah,
Starting with the presentation from the 66 Cambridge proponent team. Lizzie, is everyone promoted? Are we ready to start with that project?
And as that proponent team is bringing this up, just a reminder that Commissioners Evans, Manfredi, Morris, Ron, Solano, and myself are at the most recent subcommittee. And hopefully we can bring back Anne Marie and Bill from, I know they were recused on our last project, so that they can participate in this review as well. Otherwise, we do not have any recusals.
Yes, I'm actually recused on 66, so I'm
Okay.
sorry. Thank you. I'll look for a call back.
Thanks, Kirk.
And yes, the proponent team should all be promoted and able to share their screen when they're ready.
Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great, great. Excited to be back. Commissioners, BPDA staff, thank you for the time tonight. We're grateful to be back at full committee. My name is Danny Guadagnoli. I'm with the Fallon Company, joined by several colleagues, as well as Joe Mamayak from SGA and Andrea Veruti from Landwork Studio. We're here obviously to talk about 66 Cambridge Street, so we'll jump right in. Here's the project at a glance, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory. It's a 2-building scheme, 812,000 square feet of development geared towards life science and R&D uses, about an acre of open space. And if you're looking at the page here, to the right is the north building, to the left is the south building, and I-93 is running north to south as you move left on the page behind 2 buildings. From a site plan perspective, a couple big things to highlight here. was really the relationship our site has between Hood Park on your left and the MBTA Sullivan Square MBTA station on the right. Right now, this is currently a parking lot and really not navigable for pedestrians. So we wanted to create a pedestrian spine that kind of was the backbone of the project, buffer against the highway using the buildings, and a really great front door experience here on D Street. In terms of process to date, like I said, we're very grateful for all the feedback and engagement on this project from the group, from the BPDA and the community. It's been about a year since we've been at full committee. Tonight, we're focused really on these last few bullets, which is what we heard at the last subcommittee meeting on February 20th. I'll kind of walk through them quickly here, and then we'll jump right in to the specifics. But the first one is the building entry canopies, making those feel more in line with the overall design of the building. The second bullet here is continuing to refine that secondary language within the arcade and improving that human scale design for the pedestrian. And then lastly, pedestrian safety and comfort. We heard some great feedback on the Cambridge Street corner specifically, so we'll get into how we address that as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Andrea to talk about the public realm.
Thank you, Danny. As you can see here, these are two images of the evolution of the plan that has been going on in the last year. We have really worked to increase the amount of green areas that the site is offering to the public. We have also realigned the main entry sequence on this street, aligning up with the streetscape experience from the new stack. And this has been done by repositioning the area of the drop-off that has also been reduced from a 2-lane drop-off to 1-lane drop-off, and maintaining, of course, a continuity with our shared use system of the path that comes through the site, maintaining a minimum width always of 10 feet. We have also tried to explore areas also where we could reduce the amount of use of stairs to provide a better level of accessibility, both from the public, from the outside into the building, and vice versa. And with that, I'm going to give it to Joe, who's going to walk us some of the improvements on the architecture.
Thanks, Andrea. Happy to share the updates here. You can see where we were a year ago on the left-hand side and the current design on the right side. Some of the recent conversations were focused on, improving the entry levels or the entryways to the buildings right and left. What we had before was a recessed element that was protruding a little bit. We have now gone to a design where it's actually recessed within the building, and we have a small canopy that highlight the building entryways. They complement what is happening from a retail opportunity and around the main entryway. You can see the graceful transition to the resiliency level, and we've added the architectural fins for that human scale, and also the warmth that is added and works with the nice material choices of the soffit. One of the big items that we looked at was looking at the arcade and the number of columns. By eliminating every other column, we actually increased the transparency, the natural light that goes into that space, the sight lines in and around that really unified and enhanced that public realm experience. The other thing I want to point out at the bottom of the screen are entry points or crossover or transition points. Once the neighboring development is built, we looked at how the urban framework would work, as well as the midpoints. And so we look at the possibilities of how that could be tied together with the future development. In terms of the human scale strategies, there are a number of things that we've been working on through the last couple presentations. The green are really the landscape features, the enhanced landscape beddings at the columns, the canopy trees on the left-hand side. In terms of the architecture, we introduced the architectural fins. We have a digital display. We have unified all the design for the handrails. And then most recently, we had commentary about the lighting. So we looked at the scale of lighting within the arcade, as well as sort of the low lighting illumination that would go across the facades, as well as the walking surfaces, making sure that we would have at least 1 foot candle of lighting that goes throughout that walkway. In terms of the design evolution, you can see where we were a year ago, and on the right-hand side where the design is currently, you can see by the elimination of the column how that really opens that up, connects the shared pathway with the arcade itself, begin to appreciate the landscape features and as well as the architectural elements that are currently within the arcade itself. There are a number of complementary views in and around that arcade, some views on the outside, a few views just on the inside. The holistic approach to really make this a improved public realm experience that happens within that zone. And then the gateway, this point, it was really key to a lot of the conversations. You can see where the design was on the left-hand side, the right-hand side where we increase the scale. We have a 2-story expression ray at the base for just the start. We have that nice articulated canopy that then transitions to be one language as it goes into the arcade itself. And then you can see the architectural fins that come around and give that added scale. All of this is really featured on and focused on some of our original design initiatives, which is to have that sight line to hood stack that you see just beyond. What we've added also is in terms of wayfinding and that added details, you can see in the lower left-hand side, that site feature that says, that's the introduction, that's the threshold into the site, into the Hood Park neighborhood beyond. If you're coming from the other direction, there would be signage on that side to give, directions to the T-stop, that's just beyond. Now, all of this was kept in mind with the pedestrian safety, which Danny is going to talk about right now.
Thanks, Joe. So to give everyone kind of a refresher on how pedestrians currently move through the site, that's on the left side of your screen, so the existing condition. And that's compared to what we're doing and what we're proposing in terms of how we line up with Hood Park in the future. So currently pedestrians have to go down Spice Street and then they can cross at Cambridge Street, likely at this crossing. What we're proposing is to line up with Stack Street and create a more direct pedestrian connection through the site from Hood Park, which is planned south through the site. And then there's a crossing here, which crosses over the I-93 off-ramp, and then another crossing on Cambridge Street. Pedestrians could theoretically also continue to use that other crosswalk closer to Spice Street on Cambridge Street to access Sullivan Square Station. There's actually a path through the parking lot. So to zoom in on that a little bit more, this was really the area that got talked about a lot at our last design committee meeting. And it's very important to us that the safety here is prioritized. So what we've done is talking to our team at Howard Stein Hudson, we've talked through a strategy as to how we can shorten this crosswalk from 84 feet to 55 feet in coordination, obviously, with various agencies. That's something that we're committed to. And also reducing the size of this crosswalk, the length of this crosswalk, I should say, and straightening it along Cambridge Street here from 62 feet to 55 feet. So those are two major.
Just under 2 minutes.
Thanks, Christina. So those are two major moves we think really enhance the pedestrian safety and just the directness of that path. And you can see here, it really does make a huge difference. This is that dotted line is the current condition, and we plan to kind of bump out these curbs, shorten this substantially. And what we've already done and continue to study is making sure that pedestrians from this platform have a good sight line to be able to see cars and a safe area here as they approach the crosswalk. Obviously, there's a lot on this slide. This is meant to kind of showcase the breadth of how far we've come over the last year. Again, very much appreciate all the feedback. I know I speak from the whole team to, emphasize the fact that we're very proud of where we ended up after all the feedback from the design committee and the BPDA and anyone else who's engaged with this project. So looking forward to the dialogue, and again, very excited for the project and grateful for all the feedback to date. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in under time as well. Appreciate the presentation, Danny, Andrea, and Joe. Commissioners, if you have a comment, please raise your Zoom hand and we will call on you. David Manfredi.
First, thank you for your responsiveness. I was at the last subcommittee meeting, and a couple of things that you've done that I think are really to the benefit of the project. The entrances that we talked about very specifically that felt, I don't know if a combination or of attached but not integrated, and also a little bit foreign. You made them so much better by just simplifying and minimalizing them, and it feels so much better in that context. The other thing, we talked in subcommittee about the arcade and eliminating every other column, and I don't know that I fully saw it last time, but there's two benefits. One is you increase the openness of the arcade, which I think will increase its usability as well as its safety, but daylight to the ground floor of the building. But the other thing I just saw tonight is it allowed you to let all of the remaining columns go to the ground instead of the intersection of the column and the curve, which I didn't realize how much it bothered me until you took them away, and then I felt so much better. So I think there's a clarity there that's much nicer. There is something in that rendering that bothers me a little. It bothered me the other night, and I'm going to let my landscape colleagues be more articulate about this, but I know I think you're creating that zone between the columns with the kind of planter's edge in order to solve some issues between the grade of the building and the grade outside the building. And you need some kind of do that. But I every time I look at that, the close-in drawing, I think it might be the next one. Yeah, any of these actually, I don't know. I just feel like that. Yeah, this one, the lower right is the one. It just feels like that green is just sort of in prison, it's captured. And I suspect your slopes are such that you need the guardrail and all of that, but I do wonder if any of my landscape colleagues has a better solution for that. And then my last comment is, if you could go to the intersection that we talked about so much in subcommittee, I think this is a tremendous improvement, reducing that crosswalk by almost 30 feet. But let me ask you, where are you in the process of being able to do something like that? Do you have BPDA transportation, BTD support? Are we looking at a solution that you can really implement? Because I think it's night and day. I want to see it get done. And I know these things aren't easy to get done. So where are you in that process?
Thank you, Commissioner Manfredi. Thanks for all the kind comments. Brian Bizel, are you on? Brian Bizel from Howard Stein Hudson.
Yeah, good to see everyone this evening. Brian Bizel from Howard Stein Hudson. So the city's on board, right? Obviously, this is, complete streets. It's what they would, typically want. Because it is the highway off-ramp, we also need MassDOT approval. We haven't gone through that process yet, but we did design it. The sections you're seeing in green were based on the truck movements and auto turn that would be coming off the ramp. So yes, we're making it tighter, but we're not making it tighter and precluding, one, any of their travel lanes or changing their signal timings. And two, we're not precluding the big trucks that do come off the off-ramp, especially to get over to Chelsea and the industrial areas over there. So you can see that the sliver on the right side is just a sliver, because if we started to make that radius smaller, then the trucks wouldn't be able to make a right turn and stay within the lane. So we're not doing anything that they shouldn't allow, but we do have to go through that process with them.
Well, thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. I have every confidence that you're going to convince Mass Highway or DOT to get that done. But I guess I'm going to request that somehow the proponent comes back and reports to us on that when you're successful with it. But thank you very much. I really appreciate the response here.
We can also add that to our motion, David,
Yeah.
a little later on. Thank you for the comments and Brian for your response. I'm wondering, just as Anne Marie and other comments come, can you put up a site plan for us from your slide deck?
Exactly. We don't need to look at roadways at BCDC.
Actually, I think we are all absolutely excited to see that because we spent a lot of time at subcommittee and so glad that you were able to bring those diagrams.
Yeah, and it's a shame I wasn't on a couple of weeks ago because this has been in the works. So it would have been a much easier response. But I was on vacation that week with the schools being off. So,
No problem.
glad everyone's vision is aligning here in this one.
No problem. Glad you could join tonight. Anne Marie?
Thank you. So I think this is the first time I'm seeing this project. So I appreciate all the effort that's gone on behalf of both the proponent and my BCDC colleagues and BPDA staff. In looking at it, I still have some concerns about the overall palette. Still seems a little monotonous to me. I'm looking for a little bit more. It feels more a bit corporate. The color or the differentiation I see is in the flowering plants. So I'll defer to my colleague, Commissioner Solano, and just the landscape, but just would like to see a little bit more texture to it. I understand. I was looking for the building entrances. I assume that the entrances that were addressed in prior subcommittee meetings are sort of that gateway into the site, but just, I guess, overall, I'm thinking about the pedestrian experience, and it feels like some of these changes that are made are very fine-grained, and it would be nice to see a little bit more texture that provides some diversity in the building. It seems it's, again, very uniform palette, and some differentiation I think would be helpful, would help to strengthen the design.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Lara, I see your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, terrific. Could we take a look at the perspective that shows the reduced columns? I think it's an elevation.
Yeah, we had an early one. There's where we go side by side. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Go back to the one that you had up. That does show it better. And while you're doing that, this is perfect. I wanted to thank David for bringing up something that has kind of been, gnawing at me and not quite being able to identify it. And it has to do with those plant beds that are around the columns. I think it's important how those columns come down and hit the ground. And I'm not so sure that these plant beds, which have been reduced even more by the lessening of the columns, which I think was the right thing to do, that whether or not they're feeling like leftover pieces, and whether or not you could take that land, it's not much, but add that landscape to the other side so that you can start to get a little more room on that important edge that looks over the parking lot. And just let the columns come down. I think that the grade inside the columns and the grade outside the columns is the same, but correct me if I'm wrong there.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that, if you think about people just sort of moving through the space and being able to weave in and out of the columns, in the rain, you go under it, you come out and you want to sort of weave back and forth. And I think that you might get a lot more depth and strength to the edge against the parking lot if you took whatever real estate is given to those plant beds and shifted it to the edge.
Yeah, so right now, sorry.
Go ahead, Andrea. Go ahead. No, you go, please.
Okay. Now we did reduce, in fact, the depth from before, and we moved it towards the edge on the parking. Right now, it's basically really the space between each column. So there's no we're not losing any real estate because there's the face of the column. We're not putting planting on the front. So it's basically just between each column. We could get rid of it from a visual standpoint, but we're not losing any space. So we're really maximizing the amount. So that is just added bonus. We could get rid of it if we like more of the look of a continuity of the ground there, but because we needed to have the handrails in that location, we felt to keep them. But we are maximizing the side against the parking indeed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I will say that, you know, it's unfortunate that the rails kind of have to ring the columns that come down. I think it kind of distracts from the strength of those. The scale's so different, the materials are different, and you know, if I were the architect, I'm not so sure I'd like those hemmed-in columns.
I think that element could be changed because we don't need it to be on the landing side. We don't need it to wrap, so that could be changed.
Yeah, and the location of that rail, right? It's on one side right now. Is that right? It's
on both.
The
it's on both
outside
sides
and the inside.
Yeah, it's on both
Right.
sides of the column.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you're required to have that because of the
slope.
lengths, but I wonder if you could keep the one on the inside because you need it, and then think about offsetting the other one. I know that there's the ability in landscape ramps, right, and still meeting the ADA to have that rail offset. And so maybe it actually, you know, moves and kind of frees up the building columns a bit there. And, you know, if you're I think it would just add something to it. And, you know, those small plant beds are always so tough to keep going. You know, they just are. You're going to get the rain shadow from the overhang. It's just, you know, as it is, it's really tough to maintain landscapes, as you know.
I think
the tragedy of our profession.
Yeah, no,
I think
I get your point.
Based on all the good conversations right here, I might look at, you know, having a discontinuance of that rail so it doesn't wrap around the ends of these columns or the beginning of the columns themselves. Just break that completely. And then what the team will look at is, you know, maintaining one side, and maybe we can do something on the other side so it doesn't look like such a strong feature. And I think we actually want, you know, these handrails to be subservient to the grace and the strength of the building, and we want the building to land there. So I think the combination of that with, you know, removing, you know, what we're hearing here is like removing or eliminating that landscape feature between the columns and just have a continuous hardscape, you know, through that area might be a really nice, clean language. And once again, it unifies, you know, the visual experience through that space.
Yeah, and there's an insistency about having those two ramps, right? One underneath the building and one outside, that just gets further strengthened with that bed and with the rail. And, you know, I don't know if you can shift the rail to the other side, to the landscape side, you know, the thicker landscape, and I'll leave that to you. But, you know, what that may do is it allows people to at least feel like they can weave in and out of those spaces. And when you have long walks like this, anything that allows people to kind of take body movement in a different way, I think is refreshing.
Ara, thanks for your comments. Bill?
Yes, can you pull out the crosswalk diagrams again? Yeah, this one for the moment, and then we might look at the other. I appreciate, like David, by the way, I appreciate some of the people people cross the crosswalk, the first 55-foot one that used to be 84, and then they walk a little farther, and then they turn right to go across the street to get to the T-stop. And this is in shadow. And how safe is that really? And then, of course, they have to turn right again and cross the exit ramps of the buses as I read the plans of the T station, and all to connect what should have been an easy connection to the Hood project farther down the Rutherford. And so then I ask, what happens if you, in this diagram, deal with the crosswalk that's over on the right-hand side? Is that something that you might, if you, with your cursor, if you could point to that, right, over to the right,
Near Spice
Well,
Street, near
this one?
Spice Street, Bill?
right there. Is that indeed possibly a safer way to cross a really difficult site condition? And I don't know the answer to that, but I just would hate to have something we've done that's predicated on something that is still a series of unsafe crosswalks. And so I just ask you that. And
Commissioner Ron, if I could offer an answer to that, this is Seth Reisman with the BPDA.
yes,
We talk, following the design subcommittee, we did talk to our transportation team about this whole area, and Cambridge Street itself is under study by BTD and BPDA transportation planning, and significant improvements are expected along Cambridge Street, but that process hasn't been concluded and fully taken public yet. So while there are some initial designs and thinking that will improve Cambridge Street here, we asked the proponent not to show it yet because it's not baked enough, but the city does, share the concern that, even though this is improving things can improve even more, and will do so with the implementation of the upcoming plan.
okay, that's good to hear. And I will leave it in your capable hands.
Bill, thanks for your comments, and Seth as well. I don't see any other commissioner hands. I'll just add a few comments, and then Christina, we can ask for some public comment. I think there are some really clever things that this team is putting together in this project, and I just wanted to commend you on being great listeners and doing some experimentation with us, responding to some of our comments and requests. The first clever thing I think is really the extension of Stack Street and the way that you're interpreting that vehicular way and really transitioning it to what I think can be a really powerful new, strong new pedestrian path for Charlestown. So appreciate that. The second is the entries to the buildings. We spent time at subcommittee talking about those, and I think those are incredibly improved. I think that they before were a distraction and now become part of the overall kind of feel of the facade. The third is really the gateway, and I wanted to thank you for really continuing the poetry of that arc that we see on the Plan West on that corner. I think it's so much improved, and also the incorporation of the warmth of the materials. And I also had the same response that Laura did to the railings going around the column. So I really like where we ended up in the conversation about having those hit the ground unimpeded, and maybe even thinking about, if those plant materials are removed, thinking about actually introducing some warm materials along those vertical surfaces there, as you have between the ramp and the walkway. Christina, do we have any public comment?
At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise their digital hand. using the instructions presented on the screen, or if you've called in, pressing *9. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Commissioner Eastley, I am not seeing any raised hands at this time.
Thank you, Christina. Do we have a motion from the commissioners?
I will make a motion to approve. I would request that the proponent come back at some time to give us two things: the resolution with Mass DOT on the bulb outs that Brian Bizel talked about, but also out of curiosity and hoping for the best, that we get a report on what Seth Reisman described as future improvements to Bill's comments about the circuitous path to get to the station. Maybe more out of interest than anything else, but I'd love to see that we're able to have, I don't know, some impact on making this public realm better.
Thanks, David. Maybe I can just summarize the motion there, which is a motion to approve with the proviso that we have the proponent team come back and share with us the crosswalks, both at the off-ramp and also Cambridge Street. Do we have a
Linda, could we also add the comments about the rail in the pedestrian corridor?
Yes, Laura, do you want to try to recapture the motion?
I think that the proponent should study the viability of the planting that's between the columns and the position of the rails so that the columns have a better relationship to the ground. How's that?
Great. So I think our motion has two provisos. Motion to approve with a informational presentation about the off-ramp and Cambridge Street crossings, as well as the relationship of the pathway under the arcade, as well as the one that is not, relative to plant material selection. If that meets everyone's approval, do we have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor, please say aye. Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
David Hassin,
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritis,
Aye.
Mimi Love,
Aye.
Anne Marie Lubenow,
Aye.
David Manfredi,
Aye.
Catherine Morris,
Aye.
Bill Ron,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Eastley. Congratulations. We look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Our second project returning from subcommittee is 840 Columbus Avenue in Roxbury. As a reminder to the commissioners, this project actually was introduced to BCDC in March of 2020, and it has been in 3 subcommittees since, including twice this year, twice in 2024. Commissioners Hassin, Kotaritis, and Sykes were present during our last subcommittee, so we'll ask those 3 commissioners to kick us off in comments once the proponent has had a chance to present. And Mimi Love, Anne Marie Lubenow, and David Manfredi are all recused from this project, so we'll welcome you back following that.
Thank you.
Linda, I'm not recused.
All right, thanks, Anne Marie. All right, I think we're all able to see the slides if the proponent wants to begin the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, elected officials, BPDA staff, and members of the public. My name is Victoria Abelina, and I'm an Associate Vice President for Campus Planning and Design at Northeastern University. I am joined today by our project team and Jason Wills from American Campus Communities, who are our partners in this proposed institutional project. We're here today to share a design for our student residence hall that is located at 840 Columbus Avenue in Roxbury. And as Linda said, originally filed in November of 2019, and this project has undergone significant public review process. As an academic and research institution with the largest student population in Boston, we are stewards of our built environment, and we take pride in design and quality of projects we propose in the city of Boston and in our global network. We're also committed to mitigating our impact on city's already tight housing market, which is why we're very excited about the student housing project. It is very important to us, and it will fulfill Northeastern's 2013 IMP commitment to provide economic development program at the project site, as well as deliver the remaining beds to the 2013 IMP of providing a total of 1,000 new beds. We believe the ground floor programming and design that provides connectivity from Tremont Street through Columbus Avenue will be transformational for the site and will provide much needed public realm improvements and connections to Northeastern, as well as adjacent neighborhoods. The project as presented is feasible in this very challenging market, and we plan on fall 2028 opening. We'd like to thank the BPDA staff and this commission for the thoughtful design feedback that helped us shape the building design. And I will now hand it over to Christian Galvao from EMA to speak about the project, public realm, and landscape. And I and Jason and the project team will be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Christian?
Is Christian able to
Yeah, I was muted, sorry.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. Can you see my screen or not yet?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Before I start this presentation, I would like to acknowledge the positive reaction we have been given in this process, both from the BCDC and the BPDA. These have been extremely helpful for this final version that we are presenting today. What has changed in terms of the architecture? Following positive comments from the BCDC, we had an additional observation from the BPDA showing regarding the opportunity for more brick detail on the corner of Melniak and Tremont Street. This is shown, this gesture of this change is shown in the diagram to the right. We have also provided changes to the landscape and introduced more long views. So this is our building and surrounding heights of existing and future projects. I'm just going to flash all these images quickly. The previous BCDC rendering in February of Tremont Street. Our updated March rendering showing our main change to Melniak lower building. The insertion of a vertical expression using our typical dark brick, which relates to the other gestures around the building components. And on the top of the building, we have introduced more detail, creating a sense of depth, which will be highlighted at night by downlight, so that would make a better and more impressive impact. So this is the view of Melniak looking west. We can see the relationship of the ground brick piers on the second floor on Tremont Street. The inflection point on the facade is reinforced by utilizing that dark brick on the left portion and then the red brick on the right of this view. There is a hint of that vertical gesture on Melniak side. At the top of the tallest tower with more definition, there's a kind of a lighter feel of that tower. This is a view from Columbus Avenue showing the two-story podium and how it steps down towards the neighborhood. And in between, we have terraces on level 2 and level 3 which help with that activity on the ground level. A view from Tremont Street, Armelia Cass, showing that two-story expression on Tremont Street with wider glazed portions that relate to the ground floor. A very transparent corner at the ground floor, illustrating activity from inside to the public realm. And then a close-up of that Tremont corner. We can see that richness and texture of that brick on both sides of the building. And at the base, the introduction of awnings and operable doors to emphasize the porosity and openness of the building. Then a view from Tremont Street showing how the podium level slides below that upper floors to meet the base of the Renaissance Park building. There is also a great vitality and energy on the public ground. And so then the view along the Melniak sidewalk showing these operable doors, the porosity, the activity on the public ground, the sidewalk, the activity. Then we looked at that neighborhood material palette, which we can see that historical variety and richness of the brick and stone. So then we put all that experience that we got from walking around the neighborhood and create our palette present, showing more textures and tones that we put into our building. And here's a long view along Columbus Avenue, showing our three main building components, which are being identified by different material finishes on different facades. A long view from Tremont Street, showing the proposed massing and then the Crescent parcel on the left, the future project of Crescent parcel, then our reduced Fremont Tower, and the treatment of the tallest building of the tower. And then a closer view of our building, still on Tremont Street. A long view along Tremont Street looking north. Then moving a little bit closer, the Renaissance Park building and our building beyond that. And then the last of these views is a long view from Shawmut Avenue looking west. And now I'll introduce you to Carl from Arcadis.
Carl, you have just over 2 minutes.
Carl here.
Is Carl in our attendee list, Christina?
I'm scrolling right now to see. I'm sorry.
I'm doing the same.
I saw that he just became a host. So Carl, can you unmute?
Oh, yes, there he is.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
I've lost 30 seconds of my time.
No,
Okay.
that's okay. I paused the timer. Go ahead. You have 2
Thank
minutes.
you. Carl Freshour with Arcadius Landscape Architect. The site plan you see in front of you is not vastly different from what we presented last time, but I'm going to take a second to walk you through the pedestrian realm starting on Columbus Street, where we have a two-way bike lane along Columbus Avenue. And then next layer of landscape is a furnishing zone, which has permeable paving, bike parking, street trees with additional subsurface soil volume and structural soil, and also a crafted bench near the student entry at the northeast corner of the building. And then we have a continuous concrete sidewalk that wraps the entirety of the north side of the building. And as we move down Melnia Cass, we're showing the dedicated drop-off lane, again, a permeable paver zone, and then a dedicated bike lane that goes north to south on the page. Next layer is, again, a furnishing zone, which we're proposing permeable pavers, street trees, and then starting to carve out, when possible, when the landscape expands, little eddies or social gathering spaces facing towards the building. And then the next layer is adjacent to the building, when we're starting to show some seating areas that start to communicate with the interior spaces. And also one of the comments we had was maybe to pick up on some of the color and some of the animation and some of the fun nature of the interior and bring it into the exterior, which we're starting to show on the plan. Again, the continuous concrete sidewalk goes south on the page and turns the corner on Tremont Street, where we've looked at the entirety of the streetscape as this pedestrian zone. And one of the comments was maybe not to make it so opaque and to create some permeability as far as views into the southern portion of the building and really make it feel like it's a publicly open and welcome space, and creating again these seating eddies that happen underneath the shade of the street trees, and also providing bike parking along the entirety of Tremont Street as well. Again, the continuous concrete sidewalk leading to the southern entrance of the building as well. And those are primarily the updates to the site plan. Chris?
Thank you, Carl. And that's the last one.
It was right on time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that presentation. So commissioners, we're ready for your comments. Again, David Hassine, Kathy Kotaritis, and Kirk were there at the most recent subcommittee, so we would invite those commissioners to offer comments first.
Linda, did you want me to jump in?
That's great.
Okay, great.
I was going to ask whoever's running the slides, Christian, can you put a site plan up for us?
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Sorry.
No, sir, no problem. I just want to say I think that the team has been that this was a really good dialogue, and that the team was that this is a very big project, and I'm very sensitive to the costs that they're dealing with, and I think that despite those issues, they've really worked hard to create a rich and varied facade. I also very much appreciated the fact that in some of our initial commentary that the team really explored different building heights and, modulating the various building heights, which is, often more than we see. And I'm also quite excited about the modifications to the ground floor plan. I was at the site, I was walking around the site just the other day thinking about it, and I think that the sidewalk improvements that we're looking at right here on this slide are going to be very significant in terms of making this a part of the district tie back into the residential character of the South End and Roxbury. So I'm really pleased with the additional detail, and want to thank the proponent for being very open to our thoughts and dialogue.
Thank you, David. Kathy, you had your hand up and I see it's lowered now.
Oh, sorry, I did not mean to do that. So
no worries.
We'll continue. Thank you. I too want to acknowledge much of what David just enumerated, and especially the way that this team has managed a rather large building with lots of complexity at the corner of the campus that has really, I think, arrived at a point where it's actually a very nice gateway entrance at the corner of the campus, especially with the latest modifications to materials and such. And the way that this has also evolved over time, over the course of the presentation, I think this has also created sort of a corner where people can linger, and which is a welcome area to the campus, not just from the South End. And I think this really underscores why it's such an important corner. It's the progression from South End, Lower Roxbury, but also from, I guess, the west from Roxbury, basically across Tremont Street. And that's not easy to do on a very, very busy thoroughfare. So I think this really does have an opportunity to anchor the campus and create a space where campus community can also linger and mix and congregate with members of the community.
Thanks for your comments, Kathy. Catherine.
Good afternoon, good evening. There's a bird's eye view of the schematic of where everything lands. Can you go to that slide? I didn't see page number, so
The beginning, the axonometric. Oops.
no, actually not that one. What am I trying to say? No, it was towards the end, I think just before the thank you slide.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, guys, keep going. I love you, I promise. I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called, but basically it's the bird's eye view of the building like directly down. Where it lays out all the sidewalks and things.
Oh, like a plan view or a site.
Thank you, site view. Sorry, I'm
Okay.
still learning
Yeah,
language.
maybe it's the site plan, Christian.
It's okay. No problem. Got it. Here. This
There
one?
we go. Yes, love you. Thank you so much. So that corner of Tremont Melnia Cass. So what I appreciate is the bump out extension of the sidewalks and the intentionality around the bike paths and kind of the passageway that's kind of interior. My concern is actually opposite of Commissioner Katarides, is that lingering on the corner because it is so busy and people travel very fast. I'm actually more concerned about safety because when that light turns green and people are whipping around that corner, I'm actually more concerned about what else may need to be there on the corner, especially as Melnia Cass, I won't say is a speedway, but the fight to get in that far lane, it will look as if people are coming towards you if you are lingering on that corner. Not sure much else can be done, but considering kind of the reimagination of this corner, that's an actual concern I have. That I'm just encouraging you all to think differently about how to either raise that corner a little bit or adjust in a way where it doesn't feel like a 3D picture getting ready to bump you in the face. That because those cars are whipping around that corner because people are trying to race to get through the next set of traffic lights. I'd be actually more fearful of the safety of students, but in general pedestrians on that corner than anything else. So that's one thing I do want to lift up. And then on the Columbus Ave Melnia Cass corner is there is is that raised brick that's on the very, very far end of that bike lane, that one right there, yes.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about the cars that have to turn that, they're gonna bump into that. I think part of it's just getting used to the behavior of something there, but that may be a cause of concern in terms of when cars turn to turn onto Melnia Cass Boulevard to go up closer to I-93. I understand why it's there. I just from a design perspective, but also people are going to be engaging with that corner. I just encourage you all to reimagine that particular piece of material on that end. It may be more damaging than helpful, considering that layout. But that's the only two things I wanted to lift up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Could we go to, I think, one of the last perspectives? It's taken from the corner of Tremont Street and Melnia Cass. There you go. That's fine. The thank you slide is just fine.
This one?
The last one.
No, the one that says thank you.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
I guess I have a request that that the proponents think about putting in such tiny slivers of landscape. I understand why you're doing it, which is to separate pedestrian from bike, but I am pretty sure that that is going to become a mud pit, and it won't do its job in the long run. And so perhaps, as you've done in other places, you could think about that just being a change in pavement and pulling that bed back to where it is wide enough that it makes sense. The other is, and I know we're really early in the process, but to think about the plant palette more, and to think about the winter time in Boston and whether or not we can do better than just having perennials, which are always beautiful in drawings, but not necessarily enduring. If there might be some combination of some evergreens, some low evergreens like plum yew or something like that, that will stick around, and then introduce perennials that can kind of come through those masses. And then I had one question on the site plan.
Actually,
to do with plants.
yeah, Laura, this is
Go ahead.
This is my fault. I thought, we put some landscape there, but we haven't updated it. We don't have anything in this site plan, and
Oh,
so
you
that's
architect.
that dimension.
Those
and
are
I know
great
what
comments.
you were talking about, and Carl, I'm sorry, but
Thanks for taking the bullet for me on that
I
one.
like plants. So, yeah, it was a
That's what I
my
do
bad.
day in, day out, Carl. So,
Right.
Thank you for that.
So I
feedback.
have a question. I have a question on the north side of the Melnia Cast, where that very thin strip is showing some small trees. What is that? Are those street trees or something else? And why is there a shift in scale there?
These guys.
Are they
Yeah,
columnar or?
yeah, we were thinking that those were more of a columnar tree because we're so tight with the offset from the drop off the bike lane. We wanted to create some threshold, knowing that their caliper size isn't going to get very robust, but really looking at either a structural soil or a tray system underneath to give them as best an environment as possible to create a little bit of verticality on that edge. So
yeah, you just need to pick something tough as nails, right?
Exactly.
And I'll say that in general, for one of the reasons that these small beds don't work in the city very well is all the salt. It's just a constant battle, and there's nothing sadder than a landscape that just isn't thriving. And then my last comment is about something that Catherine brought up, which is at Columbus Avenue. That sort of button of pavement seems really odd. And I don't know if there's parking along that edge and that's what that's protecting, but something about that needs to be studied. It just doesn't look right to me from a traffic standpoint or even a pedestrian standpoint. So there must be some reason behind it, but offhand it looks a little odd, and that's my comment. Otherwise, I really appreciate the discussion of everything you had. I agree with, trying to make different spaces along the sidewalk. The sidewalks have a much different purpose in the cities now than they have from when city making started. So I'll leave it at there. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. We'll definitely study those areas. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lara. Victoria, did you have a response?
I just got a very quick response that I really appreciate the comments on landscape. It is an early site plan. I just wanted to share that Northeastern has an accredited level 2 arboretum, and our intent is to then work with the landscape design firm on the project team to really look at the plants and what plantings and trees can contribute to our biodiversity on campus and which plants are more resilient and appropriate. We hadn't gotten to that level yet, but we take pride in our 11 acres of open space. And our Arboretum team is very involved in the type of plantings that we put, and we will be partnering with ACC on the maintenance and ownership of all of the public realm and landscape on the site. So we're very excited at the opportunities, but we're very early here when it comes to what type of plants. We will be going through PIC review. So I totally hear you about that strange island. I think that might have been something that was produced from some drawings we were getting from the transportation department and ask, and we will definitely look into that through the PIC and look at the engineering of what actually happened on that little brick island between on the corner of Columbus and Melnia Cass. So thank you about that. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Victoria.
Can I just pipe in on something that was said earlier? And I don't know, because we're talking about landscape. I agree with Catherine that that's a extremely aggressive and dangerous corner. And people do drive. It is about catching that next light. It's very aggressive. And given how much more activity there will be on that corner, I do wonder if some kind of safety bollards or something like that should actually be incorporated into the landscape to prevent a runaway car, because it is, it's not a conventional intersection. It's somewhere between a street and a highway. So I think that we have to, I just wanted to throw that into the landscape commentary, because that can be done very nicely. There are secured buildings all over town that have that, and maybe this is a place for that. I'm just throwing that out there.
Good comment.
Thanks, David. I think that's really important. Jonathan, and then Diana.
Thanks, Linda. This is my first time seeing this. It's a really nice project. A lot to like in terms of the massing articulation, a lot of the architectural moves. I have kind of this one small comment to think about as this kind of goes further. And I appreciate how the masses kind of meet the ground. And I'm looking at, let's say, I think it's page 8, the Tremont Melnia Cass view, relative to page 9, the view of, excuse me, sorry, 7 and 8, the Melnia Cass and Columbus versus Melnia Cass and Tremont. And one thing that's nice about the Columbus Avenue rendering, this one here, is, that podium condition at this corner becomes 2 stories. There's some slippage. There's some dynamism there that's really exciting. That isn't it as apparent on the Melnia Cass corner. And I guess I'm curious, yeah, right here. Yeah, here it's just kind of a flat 1-story podium, and that sort of continues all the way along across to the existing Renaissance building next door. So I just wanted this corner being kind of a gateway in some ways to Northeastern and face there. Can that corner be something have a little bit more push and pull with the massing? Maybe the podium jumps to two stories at the corner or something. But again, this is something I would just offer as a thought as you move forward. But again, overall, it's we can really handsome project. Really a lot to like here.
Jonathan, thank you. Diana.
Just want to echo a lot of what the previous commissioners have said, and also thank the Alcott Freddie team and Northeastern for working through this with us. I think if you go to the image that's looking down Tremont Street a little bit further up, I do think that the overall composition has evolved greatly in terms of trying to respond to its context. And I think given the constraints of how much building envelope we're jamming into the site, it tries to bring a sort of dynamism, right, to the sort of different levels here that respects both the Melnia Cass space, that thinks about sort of the broader cadence of height in this area, and how we can integrate that into the overall experience here. So I do think that Jonathan's comment's great here. It's just, I think, further looking at that Melnia Cass space, which is really, an iconic gateway, not just from a vehicular standpoint, but also as we look to make improvements to pedestrian crossings here, I think will become very, very important. And I think if Northeastern can speak a little bit to the sort of program here, I think it's, in addition to the architectural moves, I think it's important for us to consider the activation of this ground floor here, specifically for the sort of community facing program that I think could be a real asset to this particular neighborhood.
I'd be happy to. Really quick, I know we're out of time, but the ground floor will serve as a dynamic center for community engagement through economic development program and initiatives. Really, the way we already do a lot of outreach and community partnerships and partnerships with non-for-profits, but they're kind of spread out across the university, across the departments. And so the idea would be to bring all of those initiatives to the ground floor of this project and create programming in the 4 categories around educational access, around jobs and workforce development, small business support, either local retail or incubator space, maker space. We will be working with the task force and the community to really work through the programming further. And then finally, a program focusing on building capacity for existing community organizations that address economic development. So we're very excited. The entire ground floor was an exception of a small kind of residential entrance, and the bike room will be dedicated to the community and open to the community. So you know, we really look forward to welcoming all of you to come and see it when it's done. But that is something that we made a commitment through our 2013 IMP, and we're excited to finally being able to deliver it.
Thank you. Diana, does that answer your question? Great. Thanks for a good discussion. Do we have any public comment, Christina?
Lindsay, would you mind bringing up the instruction slide? At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public who wish to contribute public testimony to follow the instructions on the screen, or if you've called in, to press *9. And Commissioner Easley, I see several raised hands here. Give me just 1 second. Allison Pultinas. I think we need to promote you to give you the ability to unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm speaking tonight as part of the Friends of Melniacas Boulevard, and we did send a letter during the public comment period to the project manager. 2 points that actually did come up in the conversation. One is about the safety of the Melniacas and Tremont corner there, and how the social space there could be compromised both by the vehicle traffic, but also air quality and the noise. So that is a concern. And the other is the two-way bike path. And on the side of the building, when the South Bay Harbor Trail is across the street on that block and next to the St. Cyprian's Church, and that also is a two-way bike path. And the concern is that cyclists arriving at that corner, Melniacas and Tremont, would be encouraged to cross the street there in front of the turning vehicles. And that is just so dangerous. It's much safer for cyclists to cross by the St. Cyprian's Church crosswalk, or to venture over by International Village and the plaza there. And also just whether another bike path is needed at that corner. It seems like it could conflict both with the drop off and delivery and ride share, et cetera, that's going to happen at the main entrance. So those are the 2 points. I'm glad you're doing something to connect with the Renaissance building. I think that's very creative there to connect all the fronts facing Tremont. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Dolores?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Dolores Bogdanian. I live in the Fenway and have often find myself on Melnia Cass Boulevard, and just was listening in on the presentation this evening. And I just have to say that I'm always a little disappointed when I see these boxy rectangles against the sky. They seem so uninteresting and unappealing. I do note that there was some interesting treatment on the facade, but the effect against the skyline, I just think leaves something to be desired. And I didn't know if this was an opportunity for the commission to know about the wind effects of such tall buildings along the street. I think that would be something that would be important to know as for pedestrians and bicyclists. And also, I'm just really pleased to hear about the attention paid to the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists and for drivers. So certainly creating any obstructions in the road would be something to avoid. And I don't know if this is a forum, where something like this would be discussed, but to the extent this is such a very large building and with such big massing, and how this project actually will reduce the demand for housing on the city's housing stock. Because I think that's an important synergy. If we're going to have such large buildings, in the city, and it's, to in fact reduce the demand of student housing on our housing stock, how is the university going to actually make that happen? So safety, wind, and just the way this building looks on our skyline. Those are my thoughts and comments to the commission. Thank you very much.
Perfect timing, Dolores. Thank you. Roy, your turn.
Thank you. I really appreciate the discussion here and all the thoughtful ideas put forth with this design. This is more of a question and maybe will be answered in future meetings or discussions, but I'm just curious if the brick portions of this building are being conceived as panelized curtain wall construction or more of a full depth laid in place cavity wall construction. So just putting that out there for any future discussions.
Jason or Christian, do you want to respond to the construction panels, or is that not a time to respond, Christina?
No, you're welcome to respond to the question. It was pretty.
I think it's a quick one we can handle really quick.
Christian, why don't you go ahead and take that?
Yeah, basically, it's brick, laid brick on precast. We have these panels that are, some of them are shaped to give more depth into the facade, and some of them are plainer, so it gives a whole variety of not only in the brick tone but also in the shape of the panels. And there's a stone base on the ground floor as well, so it's there's no curtain wall.
Thanks, Christian, for the clarification.
Thank you.
Commissioner Easley, I believe that concludes the public comment.
Thanks, Christina. I actually thought that the public comment was really insightful in terms of the safety and the experience of the pedestrians on the street. So we always appreciate the public coming and offering their insights. Commissioners, we are ready for a motion on this project.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, David. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
David Hassin,
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritis,
Aye.
Catherine Morris,
Aye.
Bill Ron,
Aye.
Laura Solano,
Aye.
Kirk Sykes,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Eastley, aye. You are approved. Congratulations.
Thank you, Linda.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right, commissioners, we have 2 more projects to go. We're tracking about an hour behind. We've got a lot of good comments that we've all been sharing. So if there are ways to kind of snug those up as we tackle our next two projects, that would be appreciated. And can we invite David Manfredi back, Christina and Lizzie?
I will message him immediately. Just wanted to give a flag that for the next presentation for 2 Charlesgate, that a summary of planning context will be preceding the presentation, and then followed by a summary of BPDA design review feedback given to date by BPDA urban design staff.
Thank you. Is Amy
And-
presenting our
Sorry, Christina, I think you have to expunge my approval on that one, as you invited me back in the middle of a discourse, so I'm sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I've misunderstood Commissioner Sykes.
No problem.
I think Kirk is saying that since he wasn't able to join the deliberation of the last project of 840 Columbus, he'd like you to remove his vote.
Understood.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification.
All right. So Amy, are you giving us the staff planning review today?
I am.
Thank you.
So good evening, commissioners. I am going to provide some context with regard to Charlesgate West. This project is a multifamily residential over ground floor retail. Staff find that the use is appropriate, consistent with the neighborhood context, with zoning and with planning principles. The underlying zoning is 95 feet and 5 FAR. There is a gateway development area overlay district, which states that if a project goes through Article 80 review, that there are differing dimensions that apply, those being 135 feet and an FAR of 9. The current proposed project is 295 feet and an FAR of 14.5. And on the screen, you can see the zoning requirements and where relief is needed. It should be noted that from the proponent's submission, this is a quote, "The proposed project has been designed to follow both the intent and the letter of the Boston Municipal Code Section 7-4, commonly referred to as the Parks Ordinance as it applies to this project. Boston Parks Commission will review the project in the course of the approvals process. The project massing is separated into 2 components on 2 new parcels that reflect the different character of the Boylston and Ipswich frontages. The Boylston massing is limited in height to continue the character of the neighboring row of pre-war apartment buildings and to comply with the height of the restriction of the parks." With regard to the height and FAR of the project, given this exceptional height and FAR, planning staff did request that the proponent provide clarification on their need for zoning relief. This request was addressed in a memo dated February 20th of this year. And among the other topics, the memo cited constraints due to an oddly shaped irregular Pentagon project site, challenges related to the steeply sloping topography of the site, the need to accommodate existing easements on the site, and the just comparisons to other projects in the area, in the Gateway District, and how the ZBA has treated those projects previously. Next slide, please. So with regard to our planning and policy context, I'll just note here that staff have provided a number of plans and policies and how this particular project stacks up against those plans and policies. Staff feel that the proponent has at least addressed the question with regard to zoning relief, again, per section 7-3, and continue to work with the urban design staff to refine the proposal's design. The work of the proponent and urban design in partnership has been informed by the desire to effectuate the goals of the neighborhood plan entitled the Fenway Special Study Areas Land Use and Urban Design Guidelines, which was adopted in 2002. That has been encoded in Article 66, and it states specifically that the purpose of the overlay district that I previously mentioned is to provide for zoning regulations that allow for the development of architecturally distinctive civic landmarks at major entrances to the Fenway neighborhood. So citing that as one of the reasons for the size of the structure. I'm happy to take any questions, but if not, I will pass it over to the urban design team.
And I think we'll have the proponent present first before UD, but do we have any commissioner questions for Amy? I don't see any right now. Amy, they may be coming later.
No problem.
Thank you for that overview.
Thanks.
And I think we're ready for the proponent presentation.
Right. Good evening, commissioners. I'll pull this screen up here. Right. And so good evening. Thanks everybody so much for your time tonight. My name is Brett Benson. I'm a principal at UTL. We're presenting to Charlesgate West in the Fenway tonight. This project is located along Ipswich Street, Boylston Street, and Charlesgate West, where the Boca Overpass from Sturrow Drive meets the Fenway. I'm also joined by Emmett Gregory from McYoung Kim Design, our landscape architect, and Stephen Ng from Morrow, Vice President of Design for the client group. Before we move forward, just a quick recap. So 2 Charlesgate West is a 400-unit multifamily apartment building with ground floor retail and no car parking. The building will use all electric systems and will be Passive House certified. This is a very rich site that is influenced by city scale, neighborhood scale, and city block scale concerns. It sits at the intersection of 2 histories of urban planning in Boston. The first is a 19th century emerald necklace represented by the ComAv Mall, Charlesgate Park, and the Back Bay Fens. And the second is a 20th century idea of the high spine, concentrating height and larger floor plates along the turnpike. The closest high spine neighbor being the 300-foot tall development at parcel 12 that's nearing completion. And these 2 very different contexts influence the massing and the material selection of the building. Our site fronts one side along Ipswich Street, which is an important connection between the Fenway and Symphony and Back Bay neighborhoods. We also front onto open space and a carriageway across from the Back Bay Fens. And there's an existing important pedestrian desire line linking Ipswich up to the Back Bay Fens that traverses a poorly built cut through alongside our site. That's represented by this small blue arrow here. And before I move on to the next slide, I just want to make sure that Emmett Gregory was able to make it into the, there he is, great. So at the neighborhood level, this site, together with the Fenway Triangle where the Pierce is located, was identified as a gateway parcel as part of the 2002 rezoning of the Fenway. And together with Northeastern's Building H, these 3 parcels form important gateway moments to the Fenway neighborhood and the Back Bay Fens parks. And just like Building H and the Pierce, we think it's appropriate for a finely designed and tall building to mark these important moments in the city. So in this diagram, we're documenting the various forces that have shaped the building massing. The base zoning allows 135 feet of building height, and the diagram on the upper left shows this height extruded on the parcel. Setting the massing back from the east side of the parcel allows for a modal 20-foot setback to align with the pre-war buildings along Boylston Street. It also allows for a new public connection linking Ipswich Street with the Back Bay Fens and replacing that cramped pedestrian desire line alongside the site. This lost floor area is replaced on the upper floors. And we further adjusted the massing to limit the building height along Boylston to 70 feet to align with the neighboring pre-war buildings and concentrate the additional height along Ipswich, where the impacts of shadows fall largely on the turnpike. And the proposed massing reflects these three major themes: a generous public stair open to the sky, and also an enclosed public elevator connecting Ipswich and the Back Bay Fens, a wing along Boylston that is responsive to its pre-war neighbors, both in materials and massing, and then a taller wing along Ipswich that provides a distinctive architectural design to help mark this important city gateway, but is also limited in its impacts to the immediate surroundings. One other note about the massing: we have been through an extended review period with neighbors and stakeholders in the BPDA to get to this point. And we just wanted to provide a snapshot with this row of images at the bottom that shows the evolution of the design in response to that input. Okay, last slide about context. I want to briefly review how the edges of the site have changed over time and some important changes that are currently in design. So on the far left, this is Olmsted's 1888 plan of the Back Bay Fens. That included a bridge designed by H.H. Richardson. In this plan and the 1959 photograph next to it, you can see that the original site edge was more urban, with a clear distinction between the open space and the city parcels that form its edge. And in the 1960s, the Boker Overpass was built, which completely reconfigured the area in front of our site, creating what's essentially a highway embankment that's embellished with trees, and that condition continues today. However, MassDOT is advancing plans to rebuild the Boker Overpass and create a new multimodal bridge that links Com Ave to Boylston and Charlesgate. And what results is a roadway and sidewalk that moves closer to our site, though still not the tree-lined parcel edge that was originally part of the Olmsted design. So in these views from 2 points in the Fens, you can see our proposed building steps in massing from a 6-story warm-toned brick wing along Boylston Street to an intermediate 21-story wing in warm gray brick up to 30 stories along Ipswich Street that uses a light-toned brick. And roof decks are proposed above the 6-story and 21-story wings. And in this view from the new Charlesgate Overpass, the massing of the tower emphasizes this location as that important gateway into the Fenway. The tower meets the ground on a granite base at the lowest 3 floors that relates to the original Olmsted era granite bridge embankment. And the upper floors use a light-toned brick arranged in a stacked soldier correspond. Windows are grouped into 2-story openings, and a warm-toned metal panel surrounds each of these bays, and also provides a staggered vertical fin every 6 floors. And then at the top floor, the cladding transitions to clear and fritted glass that extends to form a screen around the rooftop. The facade is subtly folded in and out in plans, so different faces catch the light while the plane of the window wall remains flat. So each bay has a deep window jamb to give the facade some thickness. Also in this view, you can see the public stair that links Ipswich and the Fens on the lower left. And looking at the building from different points around the city, these lighter color materials help harmonize with the nearby Kenmore, Symphony, and Back Bay neighborhoods. From a distance, the lighter colors also help the tower fit in with the skyline. And there's a nice reciprocity with the development at Parcel 12 just down the street. And zooming back into the project details, this is the view along Boylston Street. The cladding on this wing is a more finely detailed warm-toned brick wall. The common areas of the building are located on the ground floor, and they're articulated in larger glass openings that are framed with brick piers and a corbelled panel up above it. And the middle floors are punched windows with deep wall openings and brick returns. And that top floor repeats that same folded pattern of the tower, but on a much smaller individual brick scale. Also visible in this view is the public elevator lobby that connects to Ipswich Street at the base of the tower. And here's a view of the public stair and that same public elevator lobby from Ipswich Street. We intend to match the granite material of the stair and the retaining wall to the left with those existing granite blocks of the bridge embankment. We very much want the stair to feel like it's fully open and accessible to the public, and we're trying to reinforce this idea through materials and detailing. We're exploring adding a piece of public art to the retaining wall that will serve as a sidewalk level landmark and as wayfinding upstairs. We haven't designed that component yet, but we'll be working on it with the city in the coming weeks. And on the building, you can see the granite cladding that forms the 3-story base of the tower. Within this space, individual storefront bays are framed by granite piers and also include a glass canopy that cantilevers out over the sidewalk to help bring down the scale of the building and also mitigate wind at the sidewalk. I'm going to hand it over to Emmett to talk through the landscape design.
Sure. Thanks, Brad.
Emmett, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, great. We'll move quick. We'll start by looking at the existing street section along Ipswich and its current condition. It's a single eastbound and westbound travel lane with parallel parking on both the north and south side. The sidewalk in the current condition is a little bit over 7.5 feet and is actually narrower with the presence of street pits in some of those locations. Overall, it's a really unpleasant car-oriented experience. Looking at the proposed street section at the bottom right, our team is proposing the elimination of parallel parking on the south side of Ipswich adjacent to our project. In its place, we're proposing an 8-foot pedestrian sidewalk zone, a 2-foot frontage zone at the building, and an 8-foot planting and furnishing zone along the curb for a total of about 18 feet of pedestrian-oriented public realm. Next slide. I'm continuing on the lower Ipswich Street level. At the right-hand side of your screen, the goal is really to improve the pedestrian experience along Ipswich. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we're proposing to extend the curb line north to accommodate additional sidewalk and planting area, as well as a building drop-off there adjacent to the residential lobby. I should note that we're working with the city to ensure that anything we propose aligns with the ongoing Fenway Transportation Action Plan that's in progress. The additional sidewalk area also allows for seating area to receive and celebrate that public stair connecting from the Boylston level, and the additional planting area offers opportunities for street trees and some localized stormwater treatment. Moving up to the Boylston level, I'll again note the public stair that will connect the Boylston Street and Back Bay neighborhood to Ipswich Street and Fenway. The material treatment of the sidewalk leading to the public stair matches the adjacent public sidewalks. That's really to help signify that the stair is intended for public use. In front of the building, we're proposing a small public-facing plaza space with some linear seating elements and a really simple natural planting palette. We also think this is another great opportunity for stormwater treatment, and we're proposing a small bioretention area at the south side there of our site. From a material standpoint, we'd like to utilize materials that are in keeping as much as possible with the emerald necklace. So looking at materials like natural stone, crushed granite, and a native plant palette. And I think with that, I'll turn it back over to Brett to talk about the architecture piece.
I think we'll just say thank you.
Yeah, we're over time.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Brett, was there anything you wanted to add before I turn this over to urban design comments?
No, I think we'll probably come back to the site plan and happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate you. Seth, are you able to step in to give comments from urban design?
Yes, I can. If we can bring up the urban design slides, please. This is Seth Reisman from the BPDA. We've been working with the proponent team for quite some time to refine the approach to the site and have been overall happy with the evolution of the project, particularly its approach to generating some site responsive massing, particularly where it meets the adjacent neighborhood context, and then forming a tall gateway tower moment with some distinctive architecture along the highway and at Ipswich Street here. We've focused mainly on the scale, materiality, and massing of the overall tower itself, with an emphasis on its sort of slenderness and verticality in both directions, and particularly in minimizing the so-called bustle on the side of the building on the left, focusing on the materiality, scale, and massing on Boylston Street side of the building, responding to the historic context, and then contrasting that to the tower language with subtle material layering. And we are trying to focus really on this public moment that's a key, that we see as a key public benefit of this project, the stair gateway from the upper level that you see here to the lower level, and focusing on how we signal to the public that this is a publicly accessible moment, which includes both the outside stair as well as the inside elevator to bring people down to the lower level, as well as some public bathrooms that are being provided at this upper level. Next, please. So you see here in site plan, the public stair next to the existing retaining wall to the right-hand side and the public lobby to the left of that. The landscape on the project site itself is purposefully differentiated from the historic, from the language of the historic Emerald Necklace landscape, and also accommodates the new Boker overpass design. The proposed height of the building does have wind and shadow impacts. And so like every project that goes through Article 80 large project review, it does undergo a wind tunnel study. And we work with the proponent to minimize those impacts to make sure there are no dangerous conditions and to minimize the uncomfortable conditions, which we will continue to work with the project team on. Thank you.
Great. I think, Christina, that wraps up BPDA comments.
It sure does.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, comments for the team as we're thinking about sending to subcommittee. David Haseen.
Yeah, I'll jump in. First of all, thank you for a very thoughtful presentation. I very much appreciated the history of the context of the site. It's a site that I think we've all spent a lot of time looking at over the years, wondering how it could be better. I think that I'm buying the urban design strategy that suggests that a taller, bigger building woven into the lower fabric of the existing historic street wall is appropriate at this location. And I think that the way that you have masked the project makes a lot of sense. What I'd like to see when we go to subcommittee is I'd like to understand the skin of the building much more. There's a sobriety about it that I think I think some of the elevations imply an elegance that I'm not sure I'm completely getting in the 3D views, and I'd like to really understand the shade and shadow, the depth of the windows, the facade, the actual composition of the facade. You know, relative to something that a member of the public said at the last session about, you know, why are there so many square boxes silhouetted against the sky in Boston? I would actually put that question to you here on this site, which is intended to be, you know, a landmark, a gateway, and the building looks very elegant, but I wonder if it's actually a little too quiet, a little too elegant, if there shouldn't be some exuberance about either one, you know, the thinner edges of the building or the top of the building or both. It feels a little quiet for the landmark status that that is justifying, in a sense, its height, which is not to say that I don't appreciate how elegantly it's put together, but I'm worried that it's not landmark enough. So that's something I'd like to understand a little bit more when we get to subcommittee, but in general, I think it's a very smart and nice proposal that I'm looking forward to seeing evolve. Thank you.
David, thank you. Kirk?
Yeah, thank you. Very nice presentation. I appreciate a lot of the public realm moves, including the stair. Love to see that in a little greater detail in terms of lighting and the way in which it is passively surveilled in a way that's comfortable for people to move around it. I think David is appropriately focused on the tower. I would love, when you come to committee, for you to talk about the resolution of the tower, both in terms of day and night. It's a highly visible location, as you highlighted, and as such, like to understand that fritted and glass screen at the top and how you might address that with lighting, as well as the long views to the tower. It was a little hard to tell in the views across the river just how the tower stood out. I actually couldn't make it out all that easily, so I would love to have you highlight that. I guess I'd focus most of my comments on the transition. You know, I loved your urban design diagram as to how you sculpted the three pieces. I guess I'm worried about how they're actually, not worried. I'm curious as to how they're actually addressed in terms of materiality and the transition from the row houses of Boylston to the tower. And I'd love you to maybe give a little more attention to detail. It looks a bit precast-ish. And I know you intend to do it more elegantly than perhaps what I'm reading. The last piece I'd like to focus on is the second intermediate height and how that's treated. I don't fully understand it. Maybe you can go to the rendering, looking down Boylston. Yeah, exactly. Nope, there you go, yeah. So it's a little hard to tell if the tower is meant to read free of that more than it does here, or if it's intended to be an appendage to the tower. It almost appears to me it wants to be its own thing. And then if you could go to the intermediate scale building on Boylston where it connects to the row houses. Let's see. Yep. You know, just given the detail and the character of all the buildings that stretch down towards the Fenway, I'd love to understand again the materiality and the detailing of this brownish building that connects the tower. So those are the comments I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Catherine?
Good evening, and I agree with the other commissioners that great presentation. A couple of things I want to lift up from both Commissioner Sykes and Commissioner Hassini is the context of where this building is. It's considered a music hub. It's considered a place of action, creation, the places that people want to belong and engage with. And so the current design as is not as risky or lends to those histories in the context of where this building is placed, which I think you all can push a little bit on that to be both complementary as well as stand out in the context of that entire area and the amount of people and traffic flow and foot traffic and engagement even in the context of the Emerald Necklace. There's a story that's missing from this building that's not adding to the fabric of all the other proximate spaces to this building that I think I'd like to see in the next subcommittee meeting or the next committee subcommittee meeting. And then the other piece is that this brick facade that's lining with the current buildings on I'm sorry, what is that? Charlesgate? Is it Charlesgate? Boylston. There, I think to Commissioner Sykes' point, at least for me, it feels a little too plain. It doesn't feel like it has enough detail. It feels like it blends for me. So I'd like to just see a little bit more risk taking in this next time around.
Thank you, Catherine. Bill?
Yes, one quick question of information. Is this a private housing development, or who's the client?
So the client is Morrow, and it will be private for rent apartments.
Okay, well, thank you. Do leave this slide on for me. I would agree with everyone who's complimented the clarity and wisdom, urban design wisdom that this project reflects. I also found David Hassin's comments to be interesting and valuable for the petitioners. The low building we're seeing here, the five, so the tower is well considered and well thought out. The low building, the 5-story building, I have no problem with its size or detail, well, its size, but I'm finding the windows are neither really contemporary nor at all historic, and yet it's at the end of a row of pretty strong architecture, and I would want to encourage the petitioner to have the 5-story piece be have a contemporary flair to it, but the scale of the windows particularly, I think need to be somehow in keeping with what's down the street in this way. If you ask me, you could say, if you were Louis Kahn, Brett, what kind of window system would you use to both tie it together with the historic and yet connect to the tower? And so I'm not looking for some sheer contemporary spirit, but I do think particularly the fenestration has to be kind of tied into the fenestration of the buildings on Park Street. And I would also agree with Kirk that the intermediate building that we're seeing a glimpse of, you know, I would encourage even more thoughtfulness of how that mediates between the 5-story and the 30-story building. So I say bravo and very interesting, but I encourage you to make stabs at slight variations to see in committee meeting whether there's something that actually becomes even more exciting.
Thank you, Bill. Laura? Laura, I think you're muted. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
you hear
can
me?
now.
Okay, great. So I appreciate the context and the historic overview of this, and I think that narrative could be continued here more strongly than it is. When you have big buildings like this, I think that the landscape can have some muscle to it that isn't quite shown here. I also hope that in the future, when we look at context, that we understand how this piece of land, and you know, you've got really tiny patches of landscape, which are always tough to deal with, but I'd love to see how this could contribute to the larger narrative of where you are in the city. I think this view really speaks to that. There's not much grounding of the building within the larger landscape planning context. If we could go to the plan. I wanted to ask about the sort of plaza space in front of the amenity, and whether or not those benches, which are cut diagonally, are meant to relate to the architecture, or sort of where those ideas came from. And I say that simply because I don't think that's a necessary connection to make, and that an opportunity is missed a bit about how the amenity space and how that space might play off each other. I also don't think that space is necessarily as social as it could be. I'd love to understand more about the public stair scale, and then also the scale of the Ipswich Street landscape. So I'll look forward to those discussions in subcommittee, but that's what occurs to me now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Jonathan?
Thank you. Super quick, again, great presentation, really exciting project. And I think the one thing, and I agree with much of what's been said so far, I think the one thing I might just sort of acknowledge as something that could be an opportunity really is the public stair, which is a really exciting component of the project, and relative to a lot of the comments about where is the kind of the spark or something that can be a little bit more bold. I think that could be an interesting moment to sort of emphasize, and also just thinking through what is the impact of that thing into the actual plan making of the building, right? Because right now it's basically facing the lobby, and then it kind of just becomes part of it kind of disappears into the bike room or the back house space. So I'm not sure if there's some sort of a double height space or some sort of a reciprocal way of seeing that space perceptually in the building as kind of a larger cohesive public realm moment. But again, I think a lot of exciting things to chew on, and excited to talk about this more in subcommittee.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm really excited for this project, and I appreciate how clearly you presented it tonight. I thought there were some really great comments. I just wanted to emphasize a couple that I had thought of myself. The first is really that transition from the row houses, and you've heard from a couple of commissioners about that. It just feels like it needs a little bit more work to be persuasive, and I think the bones are there. And in fact, the massing makes a lot of sense to me in that lower portion, but really looking at how that begins to have a dialogue with those park houses, I think would be an important thing. The other is the comment that Kirk raised, the intermediate building, while the base and the tower make a lot of sense to me, I am struggling with that mid-rise one. Can you put up one of the diagrams for us? Yeah, this is a great one. So I would love in subcommittee for you to walk us through maybe even some of your earlier massing studies to help us to understand how that kind of mid-rise evolved. And again, the dialogue that it's having with both the tower and the base, and also with the context would be great. Two other quick comments. One is about the stair, and it relates to the fourth comment. So the stair, and I appreciated all of the diagrams you shared. This is a great image. I'm wondering if you had considered making the stair a little bit more dynamic, meaning that it might have a flare to it rather than being so rectilinear. And perhaps there are some constraints that we don't understand yet, but it relates to my fourth question, because I think that, Brett, you put up a really interesting series of diagrams, the evolution of this site, and one of them included the kind of Charlesgate redesign area. I think you had a 2025 date on that. And so help us to understand at subcommittee the impact of that redesign. Yes, there it is, the overpass redesign. Help us to understand the impact of that redesign and how it can relate more to not only the building and the way that the buildings is formed and massed in Chamford, but also the stair in particular, and the way that it helps us to transition from all of those multiple levels. And also how the front of the building relates to the landscape. And Laura was raising some of those issues. Mine is really a sectional one. I'm trying to understand that as you come out of that amenity space, at what level are you relative to the street and the overpass and everything that's happening there? To me, it looks like it's a little bit depressed. And I'm wondering, you know, your thoughts about that, and whether you had considered bringing it up to street level in that case. Thank you for the presentation. Christina, do we have any public comments?
Lizzie, if you wouldn't mind flashing the instruction slide. At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise their digital hand using the instructions presented on the screen, or by pressing *9 if you've called in. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Dolores, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Once again, Dolores Bogdanian. I live in the Fenway. I've been there for, I think, about 40 odd years. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, I'm scratching my head a little bit. We've got a project that with the base zoning of 95 feet with an exception of 135 feet, and this is 295 feet, which is more than double the exception. And at its height, 5 times higher than the abutting buildings on Boylston Street, which is totally out of scale. So apparently that doesn't strike anybody as odd, but I think it is, and I think it's unfortunate. But more than anything, I'm really concerned about the fact that the proponent is planning to subdivide the parcels in order to avoid the parkway ordinance. I mean, it's such an obvious and transparent attempt to avoid the protection put in place for our parkways and our parks by subdividing the parcels, so you can be in compliance on one part of the building, but the other attached part of the building, is not subject by subdividing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find that offensive. So that's what I have to say about that, and I just think that the need to be called on that. And I'm so surprised and concerned that the BPDA would accept that. And I think that, housing is really important, but I don't think, and then here's a project, 406 units, no parking, not one parking space. So I believe in creating housing in our city. We need it, but it can't be at the expense of our common sense. And it can't be at the expense.
I think
I'm
we
sorry,
lost.
See that there's no trade-off. Yes, I'm done. I just think that we need to protect our open spaces.
That's okay, Dolores. You just cut out for a second after your comment about the parking. We just didn't hear your audio.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for just letting me wrap up by saying that we can't be we can't be avoiding or ignoring common sense, and certainly we can't overrule and ignore the validity and value of our precious open spaces and the rules that were put in place to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Commissioner, at this time, I see no additional public comment.
Thank you, Christina. One comment that I was going to raise before we have a vote for send a subcommittee was the one that Dolores raised. And I wondered, Amy, if it would be helpful for commissioners in subcommittee to understand a little bit more about the underlying zoning, shadow studies, the subdivision, the massing. And that might be a nice way to actually kick off our first subcommittee so that we can better understand some of those concerns.
And Linda, could I add something to that? Because I agree with you. Dolores is raising interesting points. I'd like to understand them better. But also, whenever we have a project like this, I very much appreciated, again, the presentation was, I thought, very good about showing us the tower from different vantage points all over the city. But as we all know, having done this for many times, there are a lot of vantage points that we don't know, that come up surprisingly after the project is built. So I would ask the proponent to think about how to represent this project in some sort of a 3D fly around or in model or something that allows us to understand what this building will feel like, not just from the 4 or 5 vantage points that I thought were very important, but frankly, from the thousands of others that we don't yet fully understand. So that would be part of my subcommittee request.
Yeah, that's a great comment, David.
And with that, I would make a motion
like
to send to subcommittee. Oh, sorry, Laura.
I would also like to see some perspective taken further back, not so close on to the building, but in the context of the adjacent landscape and the fence.
Thank you, Laura. David, I think I heard a motion to send.
Yes, I'd make a motion to send to subcommittee
Great.
with more information about zoning and more views. Let's put it that way.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
David Hassan.
Aye.
Kathy Katerides. Kathy, are you still with us?
I am,
Oh,
sorry.
there you are.
Aye.
Anne Marie Lubenow,
Aye.
David Manfredi,
Aye.
Catherine Morris,
Aye.
Bill Ron,
Aye.
Laura Solano,
Aye.
Kirk Sykes,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Eastley. Aye. We will see you in subcommittee.
Thank you, commissioners. Good night.
Thank you so much.
We are on to our last project of the evening, and I know we're going to lose Bill and Laura and Anne Marie. So we'll say good night to you all.
Thank you.
And Christina, I believe that we have a staff presentation prior to our proponent presentation.
Yes, Amy, are you ready?
I am. So thank you, commissioners. This is project, the BUIMP. Under Article 80D, colleges and universities in Boston are required to submit to the BPDA an institutional master plan outlining the comprehensive development plan for the campus every 10 years. This allows the BPDA to assess the cumulative needs and impacts of the institution. Individual development projects identified as proposed institutional projects in the IMPs are subject to further Article 80B review. The proposed IMP amendment looks to make a few distinct changes. It extends the 2013 to 2023 IMP for an additional 2-year period and adds the following projects: the renovation of Warren Towers residential facility, the renovation of Muger Library, and the construction of the new Party School of Global Studies at 250 Bay State Road. The renovation of Warren Towers and the Muger Library propose no changes to the use or dimensions. However, the proposed Party School is newly contemplated and was not identified as a proposed institutional project in the existing IMP. While the proposed projects are in the Boston proper base zoning H4 subdistrict, the IMP amendment will create the updated zoning framework for the proposed projects. And as you can see on the screen, we have the zoning, the base zoning, as well as the proposed projects, and the reason that there is no relief needed from any of the requirements of the base zoning is because of the IMP itself. Next slide, please. So the 2013 IMP noted the location of the proposed Party School as a quote proposed development site. However, the massing was not contemplated or analyzed at the time. The amendment does not provide further planning context for the proposed Party School. So again, here we have a reference to the IMP itself, where the project was contemplated but not detailed. The renovations, again, were not identified in the IMP, which I previously noted. And we do just note that the Party School is just outside of the Chapter 91 boundaries, although the Chapter 91 policies do not apply. So again, happy to take any questions, but otherwise I will turn it back over to Urban Design.
Thank you, Amy. I think we're now ready for the CBT team to present, and then we'll follow that by Urban Design staff comments.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ken Ryan. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Government and Community Affairs here at Boston University. I'm joined tonight by Devanshi Purohit of CBT Architects, James Loftus of MDS Architects, as well as several of my colleagues from Boston University. As Christina articulated at the beginning of tonight's meeting, since we've last been before the commission in July, Boston University has been actively engaged in discussions with the BPDA and the BU Community Task Force to ensure that the goals and objectives of its next 10-year IMP align with the broader planning vision for the city of Boston. Moreover, this past October, the trustees of Boston University announced the appointment of Dr. Melissa Gilliam as the 11th president of Boston University, effective July 1st of 2024. Given the significance of a 10-year institutional master plan, its forthcoming leadership transition, and its commitment to a comprehensive planning process, the university is now seeking a 2-year extension to its current IMP. This will allow the university sufficient time to thoughtfully integrate Dr. Gilliam's vision into our next 10-year plan, while allowing the university to move forward on 3 strategic investments as previously introduced to the commission in July. Next slide. The first is the renovation of Warren Towers, a project that will enhance the university's largest undergraduate facility on campus. The second project is the construction of a new Pardee School of Global Studies, an academic building that will align with the university's commitment to academic excellence and global engagement. And third is the renovation of Mugar Memorial Library, which would enhance the university's largest and most central library on campus. With that, I'll turn it over to Devanshi for further context on these 3 projects.
Checking if the presentation's looking good. Okay.
That's
Clear.
well.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Devanshi Purohit. I'm an urban designer and principal at CBT Architects. CBT's been doing campus planning for last 2 decades for Boston University, and just placing the 3 projects that Ken mentioned into the larger campus framework. All 3 of the projects are concentrated in central campus and are consistent with the original campus plan principles of, strengthening the academic core, which is the central campus, growing internally and building more densely instead of expanding the campus, and modernizing on-campus residential housing, which is the Warren Tower renovation. Just a little inset of what the 3 projects look like. And there has also been a consistent idea since the 2013-2023 IMP that we are introducing a new public realm component with every new construction project. So Pardee School has a very significant open space associated with it. Oops. So the first project, as Ken mentioned, is Warren Towers renovation. We are not anticipating any new additional GFA or any new additional height. This is the largest undergrad dormitory in the city of Boston. And there is a big embodied carbon story associated with it, because we are trying to not demolish it, but really renovate it and upgrade it to the current energy code standards, but also from accessibility standpoint. And it's going to be, again, no additional height, and also consistent with the long-term planning for Cummington Mall, which will come in the next 10 years. I'll go a little bit in detail for Pardee School since it's a new construction, new project. It's a 70,000 square feet project, and the proposed height we are proposing to be 186 feet. It replaces existing parking lot. So it's not, we are increasing the open space and connecting it to the existing academic core that already exists on the other side of the School of Social Work. And the idea here was really to utilize the existing parking lot, but maximize the open space, because there's a lot of need for the spillover space for campus activation and outdoor campus activity, and minimize the footprint of the building so that you're able to create more outdoor space, and that would also in turn create more pervious surface since we are replacing an existing parking lot. And the way that we are envisioning a longer term plan is that open space would eventually then become a contiguous open space all the way from Pardee School to the law school tower, and creating a more seamless connection both to the existing open spaces, but also to Charles River. So as I mentioned, this is the existing parking lot. It's an asphalt that is being replaced. The existing pervious surface is 9%. And then in the proposed site plan, as I mentioned, we are trying to minimize the footprint of the building and respecting the Chapter 91 boundary, which is the black dotted line, but really trying to maximize the open space by providing 40 to 50% green/pervious surface in the proposed site plan. This would also enable us to create more programming. We are looking at reading areas, a little entry plaza while coming in from Bay State Road, as well as spaces for outdoor gathering and outdoor education, which is again much needed for this part of the campus. The open space is intended to connect to the existing academic quad and the Marsh Plaza area as well, to create a more contiguous and seamless public realm. With this, there is a big urban heat strategy, this plan would contribute to the urban forestry plans of the city, as well as BU is contemplating a mass timber structure. They're studying it for Pardee School's construction in support of universities. Climate action plan to reduce direct and indirect carbon impact. And looking at the massing and the overall envelope in the context of the height strategy for Pardee School, we've always followed 3 different datum lines in this part of the campus, one being the 80 to the 100-foot datum line, the next one being 160 and 180, and the third being the 300. So really trying to use the massing and to create a slender massing that complements the law school tower, and also creates a bookend to the open space that we plan to propose there. And lastly, Mugar Library. Again, this is a renovation project. Mugar Library is one of the core academic uses for the universities and has not been upgraded since its construction in 1967. So the renovation is to upgrade the building to the current code as well as accessibility principles. And lastly, looking at all of these 3 projects in the context of Charles River, from Charles River looking back to the city, it had always been the Charles River campus has always intended to be having a relationship with the river since the Merlin's plan, and also has been picked up with the introduction of CERT complex. So looking at Pardee School and the massing being complementary to the orientation of and punctuation massings of the existing campus, but really trying to create and frame a skyline and the open space. I think that concludes my presentation. Yep.
We're just going to invite James Loftus from MDS to provide some additional context related to the Warren Towers project per the instruction.
You're ready for me to share my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Commissioners and BPDA staff, thank you for your time. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Warren Towers project. Warren Towers is located on 700 Com Ave in the center of the Charles River campus. The project is an upgrade of the 1965 campus residence hall, which consists of 3 14-story residential towers sitting atop the 4-story podium. The project is focused on the towers, the residential towers, and the undergraduate experience, including the mechanical ventilation to the student rooms to meet the LEED requirements. There'll be improvements to the building envelope to address deferred maintenance, increased energy efficiency with the all-electric MEP systems. The project is targeting LEED Gold, and the renovation will include accessibility improvements, including making all the rooms visitable, the building fully accessible, and regrading of the sidewalk to make all entries accessible. The envelope improvements are illustrated here. So the bottom image, the image on the bottom left is the existing conditions, and the upper right 3D image highlights the new assemblies and the scope of improvements, including reconstructed parapets. And at the right end of the tower, you'll see a new screen wall to enclose new mechanical space. And then if I can direct you to the bottom right-hand corner, you see two images, one of the existing and one of the proposed. These are the typical window bays on the east and west facades of each tower. I'll just describe a little bit the existing. You can see there's a concrete shelf between at each floor line, and then these black stripes don't represent, they're the original glass block slots that are now have failed and are covered with or have waterproofing over them now. So the proposed design removes the glass block, the narrow brick pier, and the deteriorated concrete shelves, and replaces the window systems and frames these openings with a new composite metal panel system. And then again here, the bottom right hand is a 3D image, represents the existing building with the elevator penthouse and mechanical penthouse on the tower roofs rendered in gold. The top image represents the proposed design. So on each tower roof, you'll see the existing elevator penthouse, and then in blue, the rectangles represent the air-to-water heat pump, the emergency standby generator, and the DOAS. And then in the back there, the gray box is the mechanical room. This equipment and mechanical rooms serve the towers, and you'll see in the upper right-hand corner where the a partial elevation, just illustrating that all this equipment and new mechanical room stays within the height of the existing penthouse. And then in the bottom, or at the right end of that 3D image, you see the screen wall enclosing the new equipment serving that has the air-to-water heat pump serving the 4th floor, and then these smaller blue boxes are all the domestic hot water heat pumps serving the 4th floor and the towers. And then on the other podium roofs, there'll be a series of air handling units, and then this gray box in the foreground here represents the new boiler room for the 4th floor. And then just a couple of rendered images representing the proposed design. So on the left, you see the existing and the proposed on the right. And in the foreground is the podium with the new parapets and the new window assemblies and composite metal panel. And you can see on the rooftops, not a significant change to the skyline. The bottom right-hand corner represents the existing brick to remain and the proposed composite metal panel.
James, do you have many additional slides?
Just 2 or 3 more. I can be quick.
Okay, great.
So this image is looking from the west, and in the foreground of the proposed image on the right, you begin to see that screen wall that's been added to enclose the mechanical equipment for visual and sound purposes. And then two views here quickly, one from across Mass Pike, Arundel Street, looking across and seeing the impact of the new project, and across the river, looking at the towers as on the left as they stand now and as proposed. And that's it.
Christina, I just had one clarifying question for James. James, in the before and after images you've just shared, the proposed brick appears to be a lot lighter than the existing brick. Is that just a trick of the rendering?
Well, a little bit. I mean, the image on the right is a photograph of the brick, and you know in part of what you see here is how different the brick can appear from different angles and different times a day. So this image versus this image when it's in shadow, but it is the existing brick. What you see in the images is to be repaired and repointed and cleaned.
Thank you. Christina, I think we have a few comments from urban design.
Yes, we do. Seth, are you ready if we queue up those slides?
Yes, Christina, thank you. So commissioners, before you with the, I'll start with the 2-year extension of the IMP. You saw that there are 3 projects, including the 1 new Pardee School building and the 2 renovations. We are not reviewing the Pardee School at this time as its own ADB project. That will come before us as an ADB project later. So at this point, we are really looking at the proposed building in the context of the campus master plan and the surroundings, and basically evaluating it from almost a zoning perspective to allow for this building to happen as they develop, and then we'll come back with the architecture. So we're very appreciative of the repurposing of a existing surface parking lot into new academic and open space. And as this project evolves, we're interested in really understanding the specific relationship of the building to Bay State Road, which is the arced road that you see on the left, and the historic buildings in that area. We'll be looking at the shadow impact on the Esplanade, the Charles River, and the surrounding contexts, and looking very specifically at the building's relationship to the open space and the surrounding buildings that will be around it. Next slide, please. And here you also see with Pardee in the larger context, what role will this open space play in the life of the campus? And we saw some images from the proponent on the potential future case of this larger open space here. And then you see Mugar off to the left and Warren Towers. Specifically with Warren Towers, we're really excited that BU is embarking on renovation of what I think is the largest dorm in the city. And from a program perspective, this is incredibly important for residential use and expanding and making sure that BU's commitment to on-campus housing stays on schedule and on track. So Warren Towers itself was presented as a separate project, but as you saw, it is a renovation project. And though there are additions to the height of it, additions to the rooftop, the mechanical penthouses, I believe, are kept to the existing height of the mechanical penthouses so as not to exceed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. So this is a bit of an unusual project for us to be reviewing, essentially 2 interior renovations and the kind of urban design level massing of a new tower. So Commissioner comments on the presentation and those three components. Kirk, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Linda, thanks for sort of framing that. But I must say, with the degree of renovation of Warren Towers, which is substantial, removal of a brick pier, elimination of compromised glass block, new profiling of windows. I mean, it's effectively a facadectomy, which is wonderful, because I think it will, in fact, have a great presence. But I think there are some opportunities to continue thinking about the impact on ComAv, and in particular how the corridor presents itself to the street, whether there are in fact modest things that could be done, projections, illumination, and the context for my comments is in the environment of BU embracing its linearity as a urban TOD campus that moves along a very long 1 mile stretch. So how Warren Towers hits ComAv to me is so very important at this central campus location, and how it presents itself to the street at the street level, which we didn't hear a lot about today. And it's hard to ignore that is part of the vitality of this place you're creating, but also in the skyline. And while we're not here to look at Pardee, it's hard not to look at Pardee without considering it in the context of the new tower, the stacked books, and thinking about the collective impact of Warren Towers plus the big data building plus Pardee in the future as a context for what we're here to review. So I'm going to stop. I think I've given you a couple of things I hope you'll talk about when you come to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. David?
Yeah, I actually, thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I think there's a lot that makes sense here in terms of the university's pair of goals that were mentioned, to the greening of the campus and the building into density of the campus as opposed to expanding its footprint. But I'm going to go, I guess, where Kirk went. And I'm more confused than I was earlier this evening as to what our role should be or can be with regard to Warren Towers. I guess I saw more impact on Warren Towers than I thought I was going to see, and it leads me to a whole bunch of questions about what kind of glass. The renderings were the glass was very dark. That may be rendering, and but I want to ask about it. I want to ask about the surrounds on the glass. I think they can have very positive impact. I'm not sure that they are everything they can be, but I'd like to learn more about that. And then I completely agree with Kirk. There's a public realm impact on the sidewalk, on the first floor. The old metal canopies, awnings remaining? Are the uses on the ground floor remaining? I guess I have more questions that maybe we should be asking or have the right to ask, but I'm very interested. And I think as far as Pardee goes, kudos to BU for committing to a building footprint that is very modest, and the creation of more green space at the core campus. And obviously there's a whole design review, both in landscape and architecture, that we'll see at some point in time. But I think the intent there and the building into the core of campus is to be applauded.
Thanks, David. Kathy?
Yes, thank you. Really enjoyed that presentation, and while there are the three dimensions that you've asked us to focus on, I think I just want to weigh in that if the question of reviewing Warren Towers or spending any more time on that is still on the table, I would agree with Kirk and David that there's a lot more going on there that actually, even though in form it remains the same, in articulation it changes quite a bit. And it's for better for worse, it's a landmark building in a lot of ways, for BU, for the Avenue, but also for its time period too. At this point, it's by definition historic. I guess I'd like to understand the treatments a little bit more, because literally the rhythm of the windows changes, going up the vertical stretch. And generally speaking, I'm interested in retrofits as buildings like this are being adapted, and it would be really interesting to understand it more and to understand the design qualities that it's assuming in an effort to do all of that. So if we can, I'd love to see it again.
Thanks, Kathy. I can add a few comments. Other commissioners might raise hands later. I thought that we would come to today's presentation and see very modest changes to Warren Towers, and I'm convinced that these are fairly major. And I'll say, you know, that the ones that I saw tonight are for the better. I think that it really can help to improve Warren Towers, and so I'm excited for that, but also I'm persuaded to see it again. And in that vein, I wanted to make a suggestion. Well, I'll say one thing first, which is that we didn't see a lot about Mugar Library today, and maybe it actually has less change than Warren Towers will have. We don't know that yet, but I wanted to make a suggestion because I know that BU is eager to begin the renovations to Warren Towers, and the suggestion is this. I'm wondering if we do vote to have BU come back to this project, come back to subcommittee, if we could have at the first subcommittee a review of Warren Towers so that we could really get into some of the questions that commissioners have raised today, but also be responsive to your timeline. And then in subsequent subcommittees, begin to look at Pardee and also the library renovations. And in that context, to begin to understand some of those changes and the larger scale improvements to the campus. When we do see Warren Towers again, I'd also really like to understand a comment, Devanshi, that you made about thinking about the sidewalk and ways to make the entries to Warren Towers more accessible. I'd like to understand what that looks like, if it's a series of ramps and verges to take up that slope. So I'd love to see some sections and maybe a little bit more detail about that, because I think that sidewalk experience and the awnings and the width of the sidewalk and the incredible busyness of that area of the avenue there is really critical to public realm. So those are my comments. Any other commissioner comments before we go to public comment? All right, seeing no hands. Christina, do we have any public comment?
At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise their digital hand using the instructions presented on the screen, or press *9 if you have called in. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Commissioner, I see 2 hands raised. Dolores, you may go first.
Yes, hi, Dolores Bogdanian again. Thank you very much. You know, I went to BU as an undergraduate, and I always thought Warren Towers was really an unattractive building. So it's exciting actually to hear that the university is going to undertake some, you know, major renovations to the exterior and to its major systems. And I just want to say that if there's, if this commission can have some suggestions about how they may, use this opportunity and the huge investment they'll be making in how this building looks along Commonwealth Avenue and take it to maybe an even a better place, that would be really great because it definitely needs some work. I also wanted to just offer my thoughts about the Pardee School. It was mentioned by the BPDA staff that they have to consider height, the height and the shadow on the esplanade and on the river. And I'm a little concerned. I don't know whether or not the university is seeking the commission's approval of the height, and that might be a little premature. And to the extent it's in advance of what that height might mean in terms of impact on our public open space and street. And also, I was just curious why a 12-story building would be 186 feet tall. Let's see, the ratio seemed a little bit off to me, unless there was some huge mechanicals that would be added, and I don't know why that would be needed for global studies. But anyway, those are my thoughts, and just thank you for the opportunity to offer my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Dolores. Pam Beal.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Pam Beal, and I'm the chair of the Boston University Community Task Force. And I'd like to speak in favor of the 2-year extension and the 7th Amendment to the Boston University Institutional Master Plan. This extension and the amendment allow for the exciting renovation of Warren Towers and the investment in more student housing and better student housing, which I think is an important thing that Boston University is undertaking. Also, the renovation of Mugar Library and the new academic space as outlined this evening, all of which the community supports. So I thank you for your time and your attention to all these things, and I look forward to following this process.
Thanks, Pam. Commissioner Easley, at this time, I see no additional hands raised. Ooh.
Thank you, Christine.
I see Kirk's hand raised, but I can't imagine that's for public comment.
No, it's not. I'm sorry. I just wanted to bring up one thing. A few years ago, when I believe we reviewed the IMP, BU did a masterful job of kind of characterizing the length of their campus along Com Ave. And I remember this at least in my mind's eye. And what I think it did was kind of put the character of a linear campus in context. And I'd love to see that again at some point, because I think it really talks to where Warren Towers is and the impact of that block and those facades. I think it also talks to the open spaces and the porosity through the river and a lot of really good content. So I'd ask you to bring that back whenever you speak with us again, because I think it was a very good analysis. So thank you for entertaining my comment again.
Yeah, Kirk, that's a great idea. And even though I know we're not thinking about the comprehensive IMP here, I think it does help us just to refresh our memories. Dolores also reminded me of a comment that I had meant to say about the Pardee School. I think when you come back to subcommittee, I'd love to understand a little bit more about how you determined where that that building kind of landed, not only in the future open space that you're envisioning, but in the context of surrounding buildings. It feels like it's missing kind of a datum, either with those adjacent buildings or with the landscape. And I'd like to really understand that a little bit more. So commissioners, we're now at the moment of a motion, and I think this motion may need to include some of the pieces that we've talked about today in terms of cadence of review. Mm-hmm. So if someone is willing to give that a first go, that would be great.
I'll take a shot. I'd like to make a motion that we have the opportunity to see the project again in subcommittee with a prioritization of Warren Towers as suggested in an effort to keep pace with the university's need for execution. And I think that's it, unless someone wants to add to the motion from fellow committee members.
Thanks, Kirk. Do we have a second?
I think that's good. I'll second.
Great. All right, all in favor, Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
David Hassan. David might have left us. Kathy Kotaritas,
Yes.
David Manfredi,
Yes.
Catherine Morris,
Yes.
Kirk Sykes,
Yes.
and myself, Linda Eastley. We will see you in subcommittee. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And I don't think, Christina, that we have any other new business, so we can move to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Jonathan Evans,
Aye.
Kathy Kotaritas,
Aye.
David Manfredi,
Aye.
Catherine Morris,
Aye.
Kirk Sykes,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Eastley. Thanks for all your patience tonight. We are adjourned.
Thanks,
See you all
everybody.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
You.